Hello everyone, and welcome to Raven's Real Talk. Thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate you spending some of your weekend with all of us to discuss such an important topic. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Solo Raven, and I created Raven's Real Talk to talk about topics that I feel make a lot of people uncomfortable, but they're very important to discuss. And it's usually the topics that are most uncomfortable that are the most important to speak about. So I try to dedicate my show every other week. So I do it bi-weekly, and I pick a topic that I feel like is important to me and deserves to have a light shed upon the topic, and I pick guests that I feel like would be a good fit for the topic. And I get extremely lucky and extremely fortunate with such amazing guests that are willing to share their stories, share their experiences, and share their wisdom with me and with all of us coming onto the show and really, bearing their heart and their soul. So as you all can see, we have 3 very scrumptious guests lined up for today. But before we dive into that, I would like to say hello to all of you. Dizzy, I saw you. Thank you so much for being here. Hello, Brandon. Hello, Star, my boo-boo, and Annie. Hello. Mezzo Soprano HD, welcome. Ben, hello. That dude from Oregon, hello. Or is it Oregon? I think it's Oregon. My bad. Sorry. I'm Canadian. Sorry. That dude from Oregon, thank you so much for the follow. You see that, Raven? That is you. You are now under my wing. Welcome. I hope you enjoy your time, by the way, at the farmer's market. Mezzo Soprano HD, thank you so much for the follow. You see that, Raven? That is you. You are now under my wing. Welcome. Thank you guys very much for being here. I very much appreciate you sharing your time with me, your precious time with all of us, again, to discuss such a very important issue. So before I go on to get into the topic and share the floor with the amazing guests that we have lined up for today, I would like to take care of some very important administrative type things. So for those of you who are new to my channel, I do have rules that are just generally I ask people to follow. So it's the simple: be kind and respectful. This is a safe and positive space. The following will not be tolerated: any kind of hurtful name calling, offensive insults, offensive word usage, any sexist slurs, vulgar offensive language. So people often confuse that with swearing. Like, I don't mind some swearing. It's just when it's directed towards people or when there's sexist slurs involved, that's where I really kind of draw the line. Any jokes about sexual assault, race, religion, sexual orientation, any kind of bullying or harassment, no politics, any kind of that conversation, any violations will result in a timeout or a ban, because people have been warned. And when you do join my channel, I have it listed in the rules. So I know a lot of people, like, when they join a channel, they'll just be like, okay, I accept. But the onus is on you to read that and abide by those rules. So I really do hope we don't have problems. We've had a couple of problems in the past, but usually it's been pretty good. And in addition to those rules for these real talks, because we get very deep, we get very serious, we get very raw, and these are real people's lives we're talking about. So I have absolutely no tolerance for any kind of disrespect. I have a code set out. So in addition to the channel rules, please ensure you are following these specific rules for this real talk. You are encouraged to participate. I love when people participate and give their own experiences and wisdom. But as long as you are, your comments are not disrespectful. So if you choose to participate in the discussion without having an open mind and only with the intent of trying to attack and aggressively force your beliefs onto others, please refrain from participating, because I don't want to have problems. I don't want to have to time people out, but I do also have to do my due diligence and let you guys know that those are the parameters that I've lined up. All right, so without further ado, I would like to get into our guests. It should come to no surprise to you guys that I've met all 3 of these wonderful people through Twitch Things. Twitch Things has brought so many people together, and I won't forget Twitch things, even though it's gone. So please help me welcome my first scrumptious guest that does a lot of fun, cool things on their stream. So please check them out. The guest command should be working so that you have access to. Wait a minute. Sorry, maybe it's not. Give me 2 seconds. My bad. Can we try now so that you can check out their channels? There we go. Please help me welcome the wonderful Annie Talk Show to the floor. Annie, hello.
Hello, everybody. Solo Raven, thank you so much for having me. I really, truly appreciate this very, very much.
Thank you, Annie.
So, should you just...
just dive in, please. Tell everyone.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So hard. My name is Annie Talk Show, a.k.a. Annie Talks. I'm a variety streamer here on Twitch and other platforms. I'm a musician, singer, a bad musician, singer. I also have a talk show, a podcast, several podcasts, a podcast called Annie Talk Show, and I have one called Mixed Talk, which we talk about everything from retro to nostalgia relating to today's pop culture. So we kind of do a take on what happened then, back in the day, to what's happening now. And I'm starting another podcast, which is future planning. So yeah, I'll tell you guys about that another time. But I'm also a publicist by trade. I work for a electronics company now, and I do a lot of fun things in our Discord. So we play a lot of games and just do a variety of different things. But again, thank you so much for having me. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I know you're very busy, and I appreciate you guys, all of you, taking time out of your busy lives to spend time with me and talk about this. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And next up is oh my god. Okay, so I've been on the contestant end with Star being the captain. I've been a co-captain with her, and I've been in the same competition. Wait, have I been? No. I've only been on the contestant end and the captain end with Star, and I got to meet her in person. Please help me welcome the scrumptious Star. Oh, you're muted. Wait, hold on. There we go. You're good. You're good.
Oh, okay. At this point, I mean, we may have been competing against her in one of the shows. Who knows?
Right. I can't even remember.
They all kind of worked together. But yeah, that was a blast. Hi.
Hi.
What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to say okay.
Yeah, remember the part that we love to do?
Our favorite that we were just talking about. I'm Star. Hi. I did music for a long time. I did Twitch things for a long time. Then I took a really long break, and now I'm back, doing all sorts of things. So most of you know me, I think. So hello, I'm back.
Well, it's nice to have you back, Star.
It's nice to be back.
Yeah. And last but not least, we have another scrumptious friend that I met through Twitch Things that I have not had the pleasure of meeting, by the way, Annie or Letitia. But please help me welcome Letitia. Oh, let me hold on. There we go. You're good. You're good.
Hello. Hi. Wow, I wish I met you in person. Everybody always talks about the lovely Solo Raven.
Really?
She is majestic.
It's true.
She is majestic.
Yes.
Oh my god, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am a variety-ish streamer. Honestly, I didn't really start playing games really until Twitch Sing stopped.
Oh yeah.
And I teach a class on I was doing it off Twitch, but I also have an extra session that I teach on Twitch. The class is called Creative Voice, and I created it. And it is a class that lets any kind of artist from any background join. Everybody's in it together. It's a small class. All of the notes and all of the assignments come from what's happening in the moment. I don't give everyone the same exact thing. And then we basically test out doing things, and we learn we learn about feedback and what positive feedback is and what constructive feedback is, which I don't think that people touch on enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like a cute variety show for ourselves at the end. Yeah, and I concentrate a lot on not being like, artists tend to find ways to be negative to themselves, even when it doesn't appear like it. Like,
Yeah.
it sneaks in there. So I make a big deal about trying to get those negative things out of people, because they don't even notice it's there. It's so little.
Yeah.
It's sneaky.
Insidious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, I've had like video game designers, but also poets and also painters, and also like
That's really
it's
cool.
really awesome. Yeah. Yay.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you all once again. I know I said this before, but all three of you I know are very busy in your lives, and thank you for taking such a huge chunk of your days to talk about this with me.
Not really.
So thank you.
Happy to be here.
Star's like, I just
Not
woke up,
really.
so I'm good. I'm good. Oh, speaking of just waking up, I just remembered a huge shout out to Brandon for stepping in and for kind of like helping me with the layout. Brandon, I know it was super last minute, but I really appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I wouldn't have been able to like get it set up if you weren't there. So thank you so much, Brandon. Shout out to Brandon. Yeah, you're rock star.
Yes,
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right. So what I usually like to do is I like to start off with a generic question to kind of define the topic that we're talking about. So let's define domestic violence. What is domestic violence? Because I feel like we don't quite have the right definition. I think sometimes when we're talking about domestic violence, we think of it in a very narrow lens, but I feel like it can span across many different types. So Annie, do you want to start us off? What do you think domestic violence is, or what is it to you?
Well, I think domestic violence to me is kind of an interruption of bliss, if you will. So, things that would be, harmonious in your home, where things are copacetic for both you and he or your partner. It's not. I think, and the way that it becomes that way is perhaps one controlling over the other kind of deal.
Controlling.
Yeah. So, which we had a lot of that in our household. So it rings still kind of, or even though it's been almost 5 years since the divorce, it's still pretty clear, rings very, very clearly in my head. And sometimes I kind of relive that. So to me, domestic violence is just kind of an interruption of that something that should be, could be, and harmonious. So, if that makes any sense.
Actually, it does, because you're not labeling it as physical, mental. You're just saying it could be anything that is disrupting of that peace.
Sure.
So I really, really, really like that definition. It's like all encompassing. Star, what about you?
I was making sure I was unmuted. I think domestic violence kind of refers to an abuse of power within an intimate relationship, often within the same home, but not always. I think that, so one of the reasons that domestic violence is often referred to as intimate partner violence is that it often happens, it can happen in any relationship where there is a bond of trust formed and a power dynamic that allows for one person to take advantage of another or to exploit the feelings and trust and isolation of another. So it can happen between friends and roommates. It can happen between siblings, older siblings and younger siblings. It can happen between a babysitter and her clients, right? I think it points specifically, the domestic part, I think points specifically to kind of the environment of isolation in which that kind of abuse brews, if that makes any sense. That homes and places like this that are not the workplace or not school environments are much more
Intimate.
bubbled, right?
Yeah.
There's not as much access. It's a very private situation, right? It's not like it's out in public where people can see most of the time. So yeah, I think it kind of shades it differently than other types of abuse.
Yeah, that isolation piece is very important. Very important. Letitia, what about you?
Yeah, it's really interesting because as sort of messed up as this is, I was like recently, I was like, wait, am I supposed to be on the show? Let me look up domestic violence. I straight up looked up domestic violence.
Right.
And then I was like, wow, the effect of it, you know? Like, because I was a child growing up. So it was just like, to me, I was just like, oh, but wait, I wasn't in a relationship. Does that mean that I wasn't, that it wasn't domestic?
Yeah.
Wait, is this right? Is this a different thing? Is this a different thing?
It's
And
the
I like
intimacy
looked
thing.
up.
It doesn't just have to be a relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wild.
True.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, yeah, it's so true. And it didn't like occur to me. Like I'm 37. I just looked up the definition to domestic violence.
But see why this is so important to speak about, because it's usually shown in such a narrow lens, but it affects a lot of people, different relationships. And I like that Star mentioned siblings too, which is often overlooked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also like we've been trained to sort of feel this imposter syndrome about our experiences, right? So I remember like when I accepted this show, right? I did something similar because I remember thinking like, do I count? Like, do I count? Like you know that what you experienced was harrowing,
and it
right?
was
and that
real.
it shaped you in myriad ways, yeah, and that it was real, and yet you're like, do I count? Like, is that what counts as like? Is it the same as, because I mean, it wasn't like the textbook, like you would, think of like, someone battering someone else or something like that, at least in my experience. Right. And so, especially with like less physical forms, you start wondering like, well,
do I count? Does it count?
Yeah. It's not as bad as other people. Maybe I'm just blowing it all out of proportion. And there's so much conversation that we could get into that contributes to that attitude.
Oh
but
my gosh,
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Like let me make sure that I fall under these little like bullet points, right? That I count.
Yep.
It's wild.
So Letitia,
Now
you
that we
did
trust
that.
Definitions on Wikipedia more than we trust the way that we feel about our experiences.
Yes.
And what happened? What actually happened?
Yeah.
What we felt, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Letitia, you looked it up and you realized, yes, I do fall under that. And
I think I may have even looked it up again just to make sure that this matches up with the first thing I looked at. And I mean, that really, I think that does it count? Do I count? Does this count? Is a really big part of that definition. If you find yourself asking if you count, then that's a thing. Then yeah.
I like that
because this is fucking from a child. Now I'm an adult still thinking that,
Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't go away, right? It's not like suddenly you grow out of it. I don't think you ever grow out of that kind of like manipulation, brainwashing, emotional abuse, whatever it was. You don't get over it. You just find a way to live with it and move forward and make progress in your life, right? Letitia, do you mind if you turn yourself up? Because I want to make sure that your audio is like totally captured. Annie, you were saying something.
That's really, I can hear it really loud and clear.
I think to not only do I count, I think sometimes, and this happened to me so many times, is do I matter? Do I matter? Do I matter? Do I matter in your life? Do I matter in other people's lives? Because people knew things were happening, but nobody was coming to help.
When you ring the alarm and no fire.
Oh my God, that's going to make me cry. I'm probably going to cry on this show, guys.
I'm ready to cry, actually.
I'm already getting teary-eyed. Like,
I don't know why I thought like, oh, just have a
right?
casual
I'm like,
conversation about this. It'll be fine.
That's so awful. Oh my
Oh my God,
goodness.
yeah,
I'm so
don't get me
sorry.
started,
I'm
if you
sorry. I'm
will.
sorry. I'm sorry. I feel
Yeah,
like
that reminds me of something actually.
so awful.
Oh, I guess I can save that for when we're talking about signs of things. But
That's terrible.
I'm
I
so
want to
sorry.
preface this conversation by saying I'm so sorry for everything that you guys have been through. Like, I just want to preface that. Like, I know that we're, you know, you guys are in different places in your lives right now, but those scars will always be there. There will always be part of your story, your chapters. So I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm not gonna say I'm sorry you had to go through that. No one has to go through that. I'm sorry that you went through that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When I was doing research on the definition, because I was like, wait a minute, I don't even know the definition of domestic violence. So it is often referred to as intimate partner violence or family violence. Again, which I think Star kind of shed light upon. It's more about the bond that is created between the two people that are involved in that kind of violence, and that's why it's a more domestic setting or intimate setting. So family violence is considered to be any form of abuse, mistreatment, or neglect that a child or adult experiences from a family member or someone with whom they have had an intimate relationship with or have an intimate relationship. Intimate doesn't always mean sexual. Intimate is just like a bond, like Star was saying. So thank you guys for giving your definitions on it. I feel like already it's more clear than what I had initially thought domestic violence was. So now that we've identified what domestic violence is, we know that it comes in many forms. There are many types. Letitia, do you want to start us off and mention some of the types that you think exist?
Of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Rattle
that's
'em
what
off.
we're talking about. That's what that's what the show is. Yeah, wow. I mean, there's so many different dynamics that could happen within it. So it's like, it's weird. Is it a different thing if it's violence? Is it a different category if it's a child or an adult? Like, yeah, I feel like I don't, like, it's all like jumbled in my head.
I think one good thing to note is that because like I think you kind of touched on this, because the dynamics between individuals are so unique, the types of abuse that can be experienced are also unique, right? You get people whose parents are have never physically touched them in an inappropriate way or whatever, but whose religious zealotry, right, like makes it an unsafe place for their LGBTQ teen to grow up, right? Like we've seen a lot of like trans people, especially during the pandemic, who are getting kicked out of their homes by conservative parents, or who are having their reproductive or their like their puberties controlled, their parents forcing them to live as one gender or the other. Reproductive, like people whose parents like refuse to let them get abortions or birth control. I mean, as there are as many types of abuse as there are types of relationships.
Go off.
It's true.
So
it's true.
Control would be definitely one of them. One of the
types.
Yeah.
I think also like elderly abuse. I mean, it really kind of spans the gamut, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
it's wild how creative evil can be.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Go off.
Wow.
Oh my God, that's so heinously true, unfortunately. Like, I've heard people forced to have children. And it's kind of like what Letitia said of like, do I count? Like, am I allowed to say no? Because you're brainwashed to believe that that's just what you're supposed to do. If you loved me, why wouldn't you want to have a family with me?
You married me, right? That's
you
part
married
of your
me,
obligation, right?
I thought that's what was gonna happen. Like, I get married, we have kids, like, and then they get forced into situations like this, and I'm pretty sure they find themselves questioning too, like, is that a form of abuse? Did I just get abused? Do I count? Do I have a reason to say no? Am I allowed to
Well, that's also
not
like we have
want?
Sorry.
right?
We
Like,
live in this culture of gatekeeping, especially when it comes to identity politics lately, right? People are very insulated in their identities as gamers or as mentally ill persons or as trans people, right? And we feel very committed to those identities, and so we feel defensive of people potentially identifying with those terms who don't necessarily fit. And so, unfortunately, I think the consequence of that is that people feel intimidated from applying a term to themselves without permission, if that makes sense. I remember, I mean, I just added queer to my bio like 2 weeks ago. And I'm 31 years old. And part of it is because I always felt like I wasn't that definition of queer. And so I couldn't call myself, I didn't deserve the term. And I think that happens with domestic violence too, is you see movies like Honey with J. Do you guys remember Honey with J Lo? That old movie. Yeah, you see that, and you're like,
wait, Jessica Alba,
is
right?
abuse. What?
Jessica Alba?
Oh, maybe not. Oh, not Honey.
Oh, Enough.
Enough. Yeah.
Ooh, God.
And you see that, and you're like, this is abuse. And so when it happens to you, and it looks slightly different, there's like this lack of deserving, right? I don't deserve that title because it wasn't
as bad as that.
Scary,
like, they never hit me, so maybe not.
Like, you'd be surprised, like, yeah. And you could tell people, what's wild is that you can tell other people all of this, right? We can be sitting here having this conversation, and everyone in chat can be like, yes, those are definitely forms of abuse. But you still, if you're in the situation yourself, you hear it, and it still doesn't quite apply to you. You still are like trying to piece together how you fit into this like strange puzzle. Like, well, sorry, I'm rambling there, but
it's true.
So Letitia, you said control is definitely a form of abuse.
Any
other types?
Also, I feel like there's something to be said about like the enabling aspect of it, like for example, like my mom preparing things in a way where she knows my dad's gonna get home, he's not gonna be in a good mood, kind of putting me like the kind of thing where she's trying to set up this world where of course there's gonna be this violence. So she's set up this world around it where you do this, don't be in front of the door when he comes in. If you are in front of the door and he sees you, just be prepared to get his slippers. Just do the thing. Just don't say anything. And then just go to your room right away. Like, kind of just setting up that whole, like, thing for me instead of, like, trying to, like, like, in her head, I'm thinking she's protecting me. But she's setting it up around like
I know what you're
this
saying.
World of course
walking on eggshells. Sure.
Instead of going to the roots and fixing it, it's more like let's just learn to live with it and mitigate the damage.
But it also is enabling them, right? By your behavior and not putting a stop to it, not nipping in the bud. You're enabling them. So you are I mean that control is definitely.
I imagine her mother was also a victim of that situation, and so you get into like the cycle of trauma and the cycle of abuse, right? Which is one of the agenda points that like hurt people, right? And that we reproduce our trauma whether we want to or not. And like in like almost invariably, people recreate their trauma, whether you have been diagnosed with something or not. And so. That plays out in the home so easily, right? Because in the home, you get used to a routine. And if that routine is daddy walks in the door and everyone bristles as they hear him pulling in the driveway, you hear the car door slam and everyone you go into like walking on eggshell mode, and you know exactly what triggers to avoid and exactly what tone of voice to watch for. And that hypervigilance never leaves you. Like you you grow up to be the kind of person who questions constantly what kind of reactions you're going to get from people. Like, what if I, when you go to maybe you get into a healthy relationship, but you're constantly worried about disappointing that person, or you're constantly on edge thinking that you're gonna fuck up or that you're gonna mess up.
100%.
So I get
100%. Even tone of voice becomes
Tone
like
of voice.
the
Oh my
the
God.
amount of weight that I put in tone of voice is I can't like I'm 10 years into therapy. Like
Yeah.
I still don't know, like it's still so hard.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
yeah. It
A
messes with your
sigh
yeah.
after you say something. It was like, did I just say what did I oh no, I fucked it up.
Oh my
You
God.
know?
I think it messes with your psyche too, right? Because then you start to feel like, oh my gosh, did I meet up to his expectations, his or her expectations? Did you know? Is there did you become kind of a cookie cutter of,
Yeah.
let's say, the person, like in your case, your mother or whomever, you become that cookie cutter of that person, and when you try to break the cycle, you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? If you speak up, you're damned. If you don't speak up,
Absolutely.
you're damned.
You're
If you don't
miserable.
stand
Yeah.
up for your kids, you're damned, right?
Oh my
You're
God.
damned if you do and you're damned if you don't mentality. And that's what the control was, or
Yeah.
is, right? And it just
Yeah.
completely messes with your psyche. Yeah. And
Well,
it just,
yeah.
you kind of embody kind of a low self-esteem, no confidence, all that. So, man, it wasn't until years later that we could talk about this later, but years later that I actually kind of had an out of body experience when I signed the divorce papers. And then I thought,
Oh my God.
You're free.
wow. And you start to see how the other side lives,
Ooh.
It's
Yeah.
greener.
Yeah.
The grass
Oh,
is greener on the other side. You never knew you could have that.
that's what I was saying earlier, is that I've got to make sure that I don't turn this entire conversation into like well, now that I found Rain. But it's wild how
True.
and I mean, I even without Rain, I mean, I talk about this a lot, but the clincher, like the moment for me that helped me leave the abusive situation that I was in with my partner before Rain was Dare to Duet. It was the after party. It was literally, I was in the after party surrounded by these 20 people who thought that I was awesome and wanted to hang out with me and were reminding me how people actually treat other people when they like them. Like how, like it was the first time in like a year that I had seen what actual support looked like. And it was like, oh, I mean, I had already, this is, I think, maybe something we can get into later. I had actually already moved back home. I was 1,000 miles away from my abuser and he was still abusing me.
Yeah.
I had gotten
Yes.
out. And I was still not free. And so it took seeing what's possible. It took seeing that the standard really can be a lot higher.
Right.
To kind of put that into perspective for me. So I get that for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Annie,
Yeah.
you said in your case it was mainly, it seems like it was more like an emotional, situational.
Oh my gosh, there's so much, man. Do you have all day?
Oh my God.
It was a thing. It was a thing. It was mental. It was super emotional, right? Physical. Physical started first, the abuse, physical abuse, and then later, then it became more mental, more emotional, and then it just became where. Did you ever want to do this where you wanted to drive? Just drive. And drive and drive and say, if I fall off that cliff, will it matter? Because it certainly wouldn't matter to me. One of those things.
You just
If
want
I
it to
fall off the
end.
cliff now,
Yeah.
I just wanted it to end.
Yeah. That's it. You just want it to end.
Yeah.
And it's like you're pushed that far that you really don't care about what happens to you.
I didn't. I really didn't. I didn't. Even my kids knew that this was happening. And you know what my kids said to me after I signed the papers and I said I was moving? The way that I moved out, you guys, I'll make it really quick. The way that I moved out, I signed the papers one day. The very next week, my mother and I were moving me out. And I left in such a way as though I felt I was abandoning my kids. My kids were older. They were 18, 19, 20. They were older. And I still felt like I was abandoning my kids. When I left, you know what my kids told me? It's about fucking time. So they knew that this was going on for years and years and years. What did everybody do? Lift the rug, brushed it under the carpet.
That's gotta
Say,
hurt.
well, it's not my business.
That's gotta
or
hurt.
that's
Mhm.
their situation, or
That's gotta hurt. Oh my goodness. It's like you knew. Why didn't you? You let me suffer alone. Basically, you let me suffer alone. You let me go through this alone. I get it. I'm
and it
so
makes you
sorry,
feel
Annie.
like you can't, like, knowing that the people who are seeing it aren't doing anything makes it so difficult to want to tell anyone else, to reach out for other help.
Yeah.
If the people who are already close to it, who have seen it happening in slow motion, kind of your life kind of unraveling, if they haven't stepped in and said, okay, enough is enough, then how can you expect anyone else to take you seriously?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember being
Yeah.
on stream, and I think one of the last few streams, I mean, I had stopped streaming essentially altogether because it had gotten so bad. I was at the point where if I was on stream, I could like hear he would throw empty beer cans just like on the floor, like on
Oh
the
my
house.
God.
And so, but I also was charged with protecting the secret of his alcoholism. I was not allowed to tell anybody. Nobody was allowed to know. He didn't talk about it on the stream. And so when we would go out and do karaoke shows, or when I was on stream in our bedroom, if he was drinking off camera in the bed, there were like cans all around me. If I moved my chair wrong and hit a can, like crunching beer cans still like makes
It's a
me
trigger
tense up.
to you. Yeah.
PTSD, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember streaming, and I had shaved my head at that point because my stress had gotten so bad that my scalp was like a mess. And so I had shaved my head. I was like I had no color in my skin. Like the clips from the last few streams are like horrifying for me to look at now, because I'm like, how could anybody see me
And not do something.
and think
right.
it was anything else?
Right,
Although,
right.
like, in
Right.
hindsight, though, I think what a lot of people do that whole like, well, it's not my relationship, it's not my business. Like, I don't know, it's their thing. Maybe they just broke up or something. And so I'm just so grateful that like my moderators, like I basically reached out to my mods and was like,
I need
Wow.
help.
I know this is abuse, and I know I need to leave. I just don't know how, because at that point I was
Yeah.
like 1,000 miles away. So, but yeah, like when you see other people taking
Yeah.
it lightly, or like making it just your problem, you're like, well, I guess it's just my problem then.
Yeah.
Guess I'm
I think
alone.
there's a lot of that with that, of course, like happens with kids, and then on top of that, it's like I feel like people feel, even like if you felt like you don't want to interfere with a person's relationship, you certain like way more people do not want to interfere with, that's your child. I
And
don't
you're
know
not
what's going
mistreating
on.
that. Yeah.
Right. And I grew up in a situation where like as messed up as it is, it was like, oh, it's me. I'm I'm a bad kid. Like I'm not a good kid. So when I was in situations where
Oh,
Oh no.
Oh no,
We lost
she
Letitia.
froze.
Letitia.
it's a good freeze frame.
It is,
was very
yeah.
educational, though. Like she's
It's an illustration.
It's her TED Talk thumbnail, you know.
I love it. She looks like she's hula dancing.
Oh
Oh,
no,
no.
Letitia.
Oh no.
That's a profile picture for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
For sure.
I think
Oh, that's good.
maybe. Yeah.
I'd like to add something, because I think you made a
Please
really
go
good
ahead.
point, though, Star, in that, when you're streaming, oh goodness, is it just me? I feel like can you
No, I
guys
can
hear
hear
me
you.
okay?
Oh yeah, you're
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Oh,
I just
my
listening.
stream, okay. I feel as though, and you hear this is very cliche, right? And I've heard it throughout my whole time here on Twitch, is that, Twitch has saved my life. Twitch is, without it, I don't know where I would be. And you hear that so much, but I have to absolutely give credit to that, because I couldn't do this. There's no way in flippin' hell that I could do this, have this kind of conversation, play games, have a Discord, have a following, if I'd had still been in that relationship, because it was so freaking controlling, to the point where anything that gave me happiness was
Not allowed.
No, not allowed. And absolutely, put it this way, the piano in your background there, Star, I asked you about that earlier, and I love singing it, and I now have a piano here.
Yeah, I
For-
see it.
for almost 18 years, I never had a piano in my house because I had it twice, and two times he broke my piano keys. or one time he just flat out threw it out.
What the hell?
I know that I should be like more horrified knowing that he's done other things, but like hearing that he would like destroy, like, you know, there's something sort of sacred about the relationship somebody has with their musical instrument. And so to hear that he would just take something that he knew was beloved and use that as like a weapon, it's just like,
right.
Well,
exactly.
It's because it's a threat, right? You're receiving happiness from somewhere else.
Yes.
But then they don't want to be the source of happiness anyways.
I think that gets into a really good point about the dynamics at play, right? That the reinforcement of that abusive power comes in the form of giving and withholding affection, giving and withholding affirmation, right? And so that whole like punishment and reward cycle, right? You do something that sets me off and that I dislike, and I will punish you for it. But you know, the reward is that if you follow all of the rules, the unspoken rules of like dancing around and walking on eggshells, then you will receive the reward of not being hurt.
Yeah.
And it's treated as like this.
Oh my God.
You've earned that, right? You're like, like a day where they go off and you have the afternoon to yourself. And it's not like, oh, I can do whatever I want and I can relax. It's, I don't have to be constantly thinking of where they are in the house.
Yeah.
Right.
It's wild.
Will I cross his path and will he be mad because I'm doing this or I'm doing something he doesn't expect me to be doing? Yeah, that was my life.
I missed a little bit because I don't know what happened.
You're in the middle of talking about your
my internet cut out or something.
Yeah, you had a great freestyle.
But yeah, I had this thing. What I just heard remind me. I had this thing where I would. It's silly how now I'm realizing how sad all of these things are sounding. But like I had a thing where I would hide in the closet. Like the literal closet of the house. So like if there was something going on or if there was certain noise happening or arguments or something like that, I had a closet that I would go in. And then I learned like it was like a really cheap sort of 2-door with like those keys that just has the flap that goes in. So I would take the key with me. I would go in the closet and then I would flip the thing to lock myself in the closet. And sometimes they wouldn't find me for a while, but also they wouldn't look for me. Like it was just like they just assumed, I guess, I was in the house or something. But like it also became like the way that I lived in my room. Like I became very messy in a way because I was like cocooning myself almost. Like it was just and listening to music super loud to drown out, just like to drown out the things. And I didn't grow up with my own room. I actually had to share. My brother had his own room, and then I had to share the room with my parents. But there was a big dresser in the middle, so my side of the room was the behind the dresser part. And so when I really wanted to hide, like I couldn't really hide in a room. Like I found somewhere within the room that I could hide. And yeah, it's so strange. Like it's so strange. Like thinking of it now and being like, yeah, that was my regular spot. Like I would bring like little night lights. I'd have books.
What you had normalized because you just learned to live with it. You're like, well, it's kind of like human nature, right? We try to make the most of what we have, and if that's and you're a kid at that time, you can't just book it, you can't run, you can't leave. So it's like I have to live here, I gotta make it work somehow, and I gotta feel safe in some kind of way. Like you try to make your own safety because the people that were supposed to make it safe for you weren't, so you found a way to do it for yourself.
I have like this vivid memory of one of the first times I hid in the closet, which was like I remember my mom made or bought me like this really cute outfit and I was 5, and it was like, and I was like, yay, and she was like, go show your dad in the living room. And I was like, yay. And I went and I showed him, and I guess like family was there and stuff, and they were drinking. And he was like, hold on, you got a hole. And I was like, what? And then he was like, in your butt. And then everybody starts laughing in the living room, and I immediately ran out of the living room and went and hid myself in the closet because I was like, I was so excited about this outfit.
Sure.
Like, and what a weird joke, and where like everybody looked at me and laughed,
And the
and I was
ridicule
just like,
there, yeah.
no.
And now that's your
Going
first
straight-
memory associated with that.
Yep.
And see, people don't realize that. They're like, oh, they're just a kid. Like, that's always gonna be your memory. You're gonna look at that outfit, if you ever still have, and be like, that's the memory I have. Like, you just said you remember it
that
vividly.
could even inform the way that you like gender presentation, right? You put on a pretty dress for the first, a time that you feel really pretty, and you're ridiculed and discouraged and mocked for it. Like,
Interesting.
it would not be surprising at all to me if things that were like traditionally feminine if that was like disgusting or repulsive or intimidating from then on to a child. I mean, it doesn't necessarily play out that way, but that's how significant of an impact these small things can have.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Speaking of clothing, I even had it to where the point where he would control what I would wear, even out of the house.
Wow.
Are you wearing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What? It's summer. No, you can't wear that.
I still have a picture of the dress I was wearing when Brian, like, we went out to the like dive bar that we normally go to, and I had just gotten this really cute black kind of skater dress, and I bent over while playing darts and apparently like flashed him, but no one else in the bar. I don't know. And we got home, and he that was the night that he threatened to call my really Catholic grandparents and tell them that I sucked dick for a living because I deserved to be punished for what I'd done. And then he said, and this is like all trigger warning, but he said that I should go and throw myself off a bridge, that I should kill myself, and God would forgive him for telling me to do it because he would consider it a favor. And that always stuck with me, that all it took was me wearing a dress. I mean, it's a black, like, the picture is like, it looks like a dress you'd wear to a funeral. Like, it's about knee length, and I just happened to bend over wrong, but that it can be something that's so small and so life-giving, right? You're like, I feel good about myself in this dress, or I feel good about this. And it can be changed around to be a form, like something that you deserve to be punished for.
You even still said bent over wrong.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like I did something wrong there. It wasn't like I don't know, the dress rode up, or it like it was that I wasn't. And it's wild because before and after that experience, I've always been a very like liberal in the way that I've dressed. And I think, I mean, you saw me at TwitchCon, Raven, right? Like that kind of. I've acted out against that mentality since then, but it's crazy how it's like a frog in boiling water, right? That when if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, he's going to jump out, but if you turn up the heat slowly, he will stay in there until he dies. And that's how it works, is these tiny little insidious thefts of your freedom and thefts of your agency.
Of you. You don't even know yourself anymore.
And Annie's talking about how he was policing. I'm sure it didn't start with, you can only wear this around the house. I'm sure it started with other like little things. Well, I'll just give into this one thing because then it'll make it easier and more peaceful, and like he'll be happier, and then things will be easier, right? And so we think we're like, okay, what can I do to mitigate the damage of this situation, right? And then keep mitigating until you realize you have nothing left to give, and everything has been taken from you.
Right.
You probably don't recognize yourself at the end either. You're like, who is this person? Like Annie just said after she got out, she was like, this is how the other side lives. But I'm pretty sure there's so much soul searching that you need to do afterwards, because you're like, I don't even know myself anymore. I've cookie cuttered myself so much that like, who am I? Like, what is special about me?
I really didn't know myself. I really didn't know who I was until I actually moved. My mom bought me, a bed, and I was renting a house from somebody I found on Craigslist. She was a godsend. Somebody I found, and she had a dog. I had a dog, and I moved there for about 2 years. I lived there for 2 years, and then 2 years someplace else. Anyways, it was very liberating, and I didn't find who I was, my identity, until 20 years after being married. It was,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, but the funny story is my mom came to me when the kids were 19, and she came to me and she just said, she knew that our relationship was so rocky. And then one day she just said, didn't you say that you were going to leave when the kids turned 18? They're 19 now. What are you still doing? And I'm like, holy shiz. I was, this was my norm, right?
Yeah.
The abuse was so norm that
Yeah.
it was every day that I thought, okay, another day. And I totally forgot about that. And I said, oh my God, you're absolutely right. So yeah, she kind of lit the fire under me to do it. And I did. And it was, man, it was the scariest thing, but the most, the best thing and liberating thing I ever did for myself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. It's
go ahead.
it's yeah, sorry. It's interesting, like, girl, like, that was the identity I was, like, I didn't have any other identity before. So it was like, this was the identity, like, I grew, like, that same, like, oh, what are you wearing? Or like, are you wearing that? Like, I grew up with that. So it was like, I I was on purpose, like, straight edge, would not drink, would not do anything, like, and also was a virgin for a pretty long time. But to, like, every time I went out, like, the things that were said to me, I was called a whore, I was called a prostitute. My dad literally thought I was going out to be a prostitute when I was
God.
15, 16.
Oh
I
my
did not
God.
lose my virginity till I was 20 years old.
That was
Like,
nice.
I mean, yeah, like, it's just that, like, what do you think I'm doing? Like, I showed him, like, it was the first show I was ever booked in when I was 20 in New York. And the picture was, like, the guy who was doing the show, like, 20 something years ago, he had some picture with, like, Rockettes. So he made that, like, the picture to the thing. And, like, he's not even, like, it was so, like, of course, I'm already trying to think of, like, excuses or reasons why this was okay. But, like, he just looked at it and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, what do you think that I'm doing? Like, worst case scenario, I'm a Rockette?
Yeah,
Like,
what's the
what?
one thing? And why is that the first thought that you jump to? That's
Like,
I have so many questions about that, but I'll keep them myself.
yeah,
But
like, every day, like things, like, I was used to the way that I was spoken to. There was always an ending to a sentence. Blah 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 blah, fucking bitch. Blah 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 blah, fucking whore. Or blah 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 blah, you bitch, whore, whatever. Like, those were the ways that he
To
ended
your daughter,
sentences.
bro. Like, ugh.
To your daughter, for straight up from I don't even know when it, like as long as I can remember. So it's just like, yeah, like, of course, like, I almost feel like, yeah, that threw me into rebellion of, like, I'm not only am I not doing these things, but I don't even want to think about doing these things right now, because it's like, what the hell?
I was gonna say that. I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
Oh, I was just
God.
gonna say that I think that happens to a lot of victims of abuse, that you swing the opposite direction, right? That we overcompensate. So I think that, I mean,
Yes.
personally, like, that fear of lack of control is definitely something I'm familiar with. I didn't drink or smoke until I was like 19 or 20, until I left Catholicism. I didn't lose my virginity until then either, because I always was so terrified of not being in control of my whereabouts, of my awareness of myself, of my actions. And I think part of that, I think this is like a good segue into like signs of domestic violence, because I think, like, hypervigilance is definitely one of the hardest lasting effects of abuse, and one of the hardest ones to unlearn. Like, I know Rain and I talk about hypervigilance frequently, because he experienced it far before I did, and that the tension of the way I explain it to people is, you know, the dread that you feel right when you know a breakup conversation is coming and you like can't stop it, but you know you're gonna have it. It's that dread, but all the time, because your brain is constantly trying to anticipate the worst possible thing and then
Yes.
Yep.
constantly.
Yeah, my mom used to be like, "You should be a lawyer." And I was like, "Yeah, because I anticipate. I've got something that I know is gonna happen. I've got all the possible solutions ready." I was like the most prolific like 11-year-old. Like, "Dad, I want to do this thing. I know that you're gonna think this thing, but also this and
Oh
this
my
and this.
God.
But
Yeah,
if
you
this
learn how
happens,
to-
I could do this and this and this. And if this also happens, this and this and this." Right? Like now, that thing is a thing that I have to like when I'm talking to people that I know or new people, it's like I'm used to this, like, again, that like hypervigilance of like tone and facial expressions, whereas like somebody will be like, because they're like, okay, so Letitia's
intense.
really intense.
The reason that I didn't actually know that my primary diagnosis was post-traumatic stress disorder. I have been misdiagnosed as bipolar for over a decade now. I've seen more the first therapist I saw was at age 8, and I've seen 20 or more since then in my lifetime. And
Oh, wow.
and none of them ever pegged me right. I've been diagnosed with everything under the sun. And it wasn't until this year, dealing with the fallout from my mom, that I was thinking back on things and reflecting, and I realized that one of the primary signs of post-traumatic stress disorder is emotional dysregulation. And I had not realized I have spent my entire life having no ability to control when I cry. If I always tell people, if I'm not between a 3 and a 7 on the emotional scale, I'm in tears. It doesn't matter if I'm really happy, really scared, really nervous, really sad, like really stressed, anything. And I could never, it got me in trouble. Like people, like I'd cry in school and people would make fun of me, or my teachers would tell me to get it together.
Oh
And
my God.
my feelings felt way bigger, and like any feeling I had would just swallow me whole. I mean, and this is today, right? And it didn't occur to me that is because the brain does not know anything but extremity at that point. Like
exactly.
The traumatized brain just keeps experiencing things keeps experiencing re-triggerings of the original trauma as though they are the original trauma. Like anything that happens that like sets you off is your brain like processing whatever the actual events are, but through the lens of the trauma you had experienced. It's wild, right? That you could go this long without seeing it. So I don't know.
Wow. When things are like, oh, this seems sort of okay, no, that means that I'm not looking hard enough for the things that are going wrong.
There must be something I'm missing.
The other food to drop, right?
That's the thing. You're preparing yourself. You're preparing yourself. And you're like, things are too good. Things are too good. Oh, you're probably collecting things to throw it back in my face eventually. It's coming. I know it's coming. You're collecting. You're in your collection phase.
Something that I've had to work that has been a big issue with Rain and I that we've had to work through is that when you have those kind of abandonment issues and your sense of trust in intimate relationships has been violated so extremely, it becomes impossible to envision yourself as a person who is enough. I told Rain when we first met, I was like, I've always either been too much to deal with, but not enough to hold on to. And that's the logic we've been taught through that domestic violence teaches, right? Is that you are simultaneously always doing everything wrong. And so you are a problem, but at the same time, like you're not enough for me to want, if you left tomorrow, if you died tomorrow, I wouldn't care. Right. And so you're simultaneously hyper scrutinizing yourself and also devaluing yourself. So both your actions simultaneously matter so much, and then you don't matter at all. And it's wild what that produces even in adults. So,
and you're also given a hope. You're also given that hope of like, if I do better, I might fix things. So it's like you suck, but maybe if I'm better, I won't suck
Yeah.
so much, and they'll want me.
Yeah.
So it's
You know how I
Yeah.
phrase it with my therapist is I just can't figure out how to fix myself. And if I can just fix
Right.
myself, then he'll stay.
I'll be
And
better,
hold
and
on
they'll
to
stay.
my
Yeah,
love, And
exactly.
I won't lose.
Right.
And I
Like,
won't make
yeah.
them angry if I'm better. Like if I was just
Right.
better, they wouldn't
Yeah.
get
The
angry.
constant thing with my therapist now is like, actually, like, my thing has always been, if something goes well, like, the feeling of celebrating that, like, that's not a thing for me. Like, it's so hard, like, because for me it's like, great, you made it, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
Don't rest, don't rest,
Don't get too
don't breathe,
comfortable.
because
Don't
like,
get too comfortable.
don't get too comfortable, don't get too comfortable, because it was always like if I did something right, it was like
For now.
finally.
For now.
Like, yeah. So it's always like that thing of like, I did well, but don't get so
not gonna
now it's like,
last.
I don't know how to celebrate the things without feeling like that's actually celebrating things holds me back in my
Yeah.
head. Like that's I don't know how to make that not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, domestic violence is very common. And I was watching a video about like the different forms and the types of domestic violence. And the person was saying that domestic violence is one of the few things that really can affect anyone, regardless of race, religion, culture, upbringing, age. It can just anyone, really. Like, no one's safe from it. And that is why I thought it was important that we also look into statistics of domestic violence. So I pulled up statistics relating specifically to Canada, and this is from the Government of Canada website, and I think the World Health Organization as well. So I want everyone to remember that Canada is much smaller than the States. So if the stats are this much, or like the numbers are this high in Canada, you can only imagine how big they are, or how largely it affects people who are in America. So in terms of intimate partner violence, in 2018, intimate partner violence accounted for about 1/3, so about 30% of all incidents of violent crime reported. So this is basically saying that in 2018, of all the calls that were made to the police that dealt with some kind of violence, 30% of those calls were related to intimate partner violence. That is huge, guys. That is huge. And in case anyone's interested in knowing, we talked about this before, but just a reminder, intimate partner violence, also known as spousal or domestic violence, mainly refers to harm caused by a current or former partner or spouse. So for this specific stat, it's more of someone that you're directly intimate with, like a spouse or a partner. But that's even worse. That's even worse. We're not even at the part of distinguishing between how many women are affected, how many men are affected. This is just in general, 30%. That's a huge number. And in 2019, in terms of domestic violence, which is more, could be siblings, could be aunts, uncles, grandparents. In 2019, there were right under 4,000 victims of police-reported domestic violence in Canada. And of these victims, 1/4 were victimized by a family member, which represented a little over 100,000 victims. And family violence that came to the attention of police, so that was reported to the police, was about 30% of that was a current spouse, 20% was a parent, former spouse was 13%, sibling 11%, and a child was 11%. Those are huge numbers, guys.
And that's just what's reported.
I was just about to say, and that's just what's reported.
Yeah.
And those are like, I mean, I have a lot of friends who have experienced sexual assault, right? And it's the same with that. Like the number of friends that I know who have been sexually assaulted, and the number of friends I know who have been sexually assaulted who have gone to police, are very different numbers. Because I mean, something I wanted to mention was, I don't know if you guys have watched any of the Dylan Farrow documentary, with the Woody Allen. Oh, so it's called Dylan V, or it's called Alan Farrow.
Yeah.
And it is a documentary.
It's called Alan Farrow?
Alan V. Farrow, Alan versus Farrow. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Woody Allen, Mia Farrow situation.
Okay, so I kind of know, but don't really.
It is directly related to this, so I will give a tiny explanation, but I highly
Okay.
recommend, it's free to watch. I would highly recommend going to find it wherever it is. Basically, Woody Allen married Mia Farrow, or was with Mia Farrow for a very long time. They were partners,
Okay.
and he never wanted children, but she had adopted children from a previous relationship. She was very passionate about adopting, and finally, they adopted several children from Asia, and she also had adopted a little girl because she had talked to him and was like, would you want to adopt a kid together? And finally he was like, yeah, okay, but I don't want to raise it and I don't want to have anything to do with it. And she was like, okay, that's fine, because she wants to have a kid, but she doesn't want to, whatever.
Force him, whatever. Yeah.
So they adopted Dylan, bright blonde hair, blue-eyed, beautiful little girl. And he started developing a really inappropriate attachment to her, where he wanted to be around her. He would like they said like a magnet. If he walked into the room, he would gravitate right toward her. And you'd think like at first, like that's a dad type thing to do. Okay. Except she started like running away from him anytime he'd come in the room.
The kid?
And, like hiding in closets. Yeah, Dylan. She's in her 30s now. And this came out when Mia Farrow recorded her and was asking her questions because people were starting to suspect something was wrong. A therapist had already told Woody that he had an inappropriate attachment to her and needed to go through therapy for that. The babysitters and one of the brother's girlfriends, they were all really like starting to get weirded out. Like Mia Farrow's mom, her sisters were starting to wonder if something was really, really wrong here, because she was 3 years old and suddenly she was becoming nonverbal. She was getting really calm. And so she turned on she turned on a video camera and she started asking her questions. And there's this video of 3-year-old Dylan describing how Woody took her upstairs and had her watch the toy train that goes around and how he violated her. And it's really hard to watch. But what makes it so much more harrowing and also easier, I think, to digest is that she's an adult now and she has participated in this documentary with the specific intention of making people pay attention, because this story came out in the 90s, like when she was
no one
3.
did anything.
And Woody Allen was New York royalty. I mean,
oh God, my blood is boiling.
He was basically funding New York at the time.
Oh
and
my God.
All these disputes, like cases were thrown out. Social workers didn't follow up with things. It's very unclear. He accused her of being an unfit mother and like coaching Dylan and like feeding her and telling her what to say. Although like court-appointed psychiatrists say that's bullshit. All this stuff. And so she's been talking. I mean, she wrote an article in the New York Times a while back, or like I don't remember, in some big magazine a while back, talking about what happened to her and saying like, hey, I'm a grown up now. Are you going to listen to me or what? And people still, people who have watched this documentary still say Mia's just a bitter woman who didn't get what she wanted, and Dylan is just a manipulated child who was used as a pawn. Like, still though. But so if this celebrity, right? if this celebrity has video footage of her daughter talking about her own assault, and still we cannot get accountability by going to the police. They're rich and they couldn't get accountability by going to the police. So what hope is there for people who are poor, who are people of color, who are disenfranchised, people who have drug habits, right? As though like people who use drugs can still be victims of abuse, but in the police, right? To the police, it's an excuse. It's the same with sorry, I know I'm rambling here, but I'm just really impassioned. No. There is a former Overwatch League player who used to be on the San Francisco Shock, who has not been playing that in a while. I think he switched to Valorant. And I don't know that I'm allowed to name him. I can't remember.
I don't
think so. Because
I
can't remember if I don't think he's been banned on Twitch yet. But anyway, recently, this week, his ex-girlfriend or his girlfriend came out and posted a twitlonger, and it is like one of the most scathing and in detailed twitlongers of her abuse at the hands of her boyfriend, and accompanies it with audio that she has taken. She's like, I won't post the video file, but they apparently like recorded themselves being intimate, and there are audio files of him hurting her and her saying, stop, no, I don't want to, like, and him saying, no, I'm really close, just wait, like repeatedly, like hearing that she wants him to stop and saying no, otherwise, no, anyway. And the number of people on Twitter, on social media, in Twitch chats who have defended this guy. The number of channels that I know of personally that have not banned him from their communities yet, because there is this sense of impunity. There's this sense of, well, yeah, he might have done that, like, but that's his business, and he's still a good Twitch streamer. And I think, like, people get like complicated by celebrity, right? These issues get complicated because what happens when the person who is in the position of power, the person doing the abusing, is also in position of power in society, right?
Right.
Not only has sway over you, it has sway over others.
Influence over others. Yeah.
Just
But
my
you
whole-
made a really good point about manipulation. I mean, manipulation in any scenario is I think something that's no one wants to talk about, because my kids were manipulated in such a way where, you know, they couldn't, even though they knew things were happening in the home, one, they couldn't talk about it, because the shame, right? The shame to talk about something the shame to talk about something that's happening like this in your home, where kids in your circle aren't, right? So you'd be looked at, you know, with shame. And two, you know, mom's just probably making this up. It's something, you know, this is not truly happening. And she's bringing it upon herself. So things, their minds are melded in such a way that they believed, right, the manipulation that he was trying to bestow on them. And then the victim starts to think like, well, shit, maybe I am the problem, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that? I mean, now he's twisting it to a degree where it's not him. And he told me this many, many times. I said, we need to go to therapy, because I was going through therapy, and my kids were going through therapy. And I said, well, the therapist asked, well, do you think he would want to come in? I can ask, but I hardly doubt it. I was always told this: I'm not the one with the problem.
Love that. That's just
So now I'm everyone's manipulated to believing that he's not the problem.
yeah.
Each one of
Right.
us.
I think that gets into a really good point, which is gaslighting, and how that. I mean, everybody, I think, on the internet has at some point or another probably heard the term gaslighting, but I think understands it probably conceptually, but I think seeing gaslighting play out is a really surreal, like, recognizing it as it's happening is very strange, because it feels, especially once you're in the cycle of abuse, right? Especially once you're like in the thick of it.
Yeah.
It does feel like you are the one who's making it. If you just stop making a big deal out of things,
Yeah, you're the sensitive one.
like, I remember I brought in sodas because I had asked my partner for a week to bring them in out of our van, and he kept leaving it. So I finally went out to get them myself, and they had been in the car. They'd been getting hot, and they all like slid out, and they like exploded all over the ground and got my legs all sticky. And so I was super frustrated when I came in the house. Like, it's tiny little like, oh, that's really inconvenient and annoying or whatever. But I was really frustrated. And I came in, and he was playing WoW, and I was like, he was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, you said you were going to do this thing and you didn't. And he's like, I never said that. And I was like, no, I remember what you were doing, because you were playing the same video game. You were playing WoW when I asked you to do it. You looked up at me and he said, you're just making stuff up. Like, you're crazy. And right. I was like, you are a terrible fucking boyfriend. And that was met with him getting up and leaving the house and going to the bar and pounding several shots in an hour, and then coming to pick me up. And it was like a whole terrible day. But what's strange is that in hindsight, I had this moment where I was questioning, like, am I the crazy? Yeah. Did this happen? Like, right. No, I remember what I was looking at. I remember what I said it. And so then for him to explode and say, I'm out of here. Like, you called me a terrible boyfriend. I can't believe you. Like, right. You believe me. And then I'm feeling bad accusing him of being a bad partner. And like, yeah. it's wild. So gaslighting, I think, is something that's really it's really difficult to pin down when it's happening, because it comes in so many forms of invalidation, so many forms
Yeah.
of questioning of your narrative and invalidating your
Yeah.
liability as a narrator.
Yeah. And that's that whole thing of like that you memorized when you told him originally and what he was doing, because that automatically starts happening. It's like, I need to know for sure. So when I say to you and you say no, I'm going to have the example of what you were doing when I first told you, because now I've memorized these things, because I have to have those reasons in order to justify myself. Like, it's like I still justify myself for things that people are like, you don't
don't need to
fine.
do that. Yeah.
You don't need to keep explaining yourself.
Yeah, the number of
And
times,
yes.
like Rain still has to correct me, because I will say, like, this happens actually like at least once a day. I will say, do you want to get food maybe? And he's like, yeah, it sounds good. And I'm like, cool. Well, maybe I could go if you want. And he's like, no, I can go get something. And I'm like, okay, but I can also go. I mean, if you want. I mean, I can.
Yes.
Or we could do something else. I mean, where you have your opinion, but you're afraid to stand by it. Like, unless you don't want that to be my opinion, in which case my opinion can be something else. I can be.
I have all these options available for you to be
Right.
happy with
Right.
any of them.
Yeah. I feel that.
Oh God. And I forgot to mention this right in the beginning, but I know that I have three. Wait, I don't want to assume. Do you three identify as women?
Yeah, I identify as whatever.
Okay.
She, they. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. So I know I have 3 women on the panel for today, but that is not to say that men don't experience domestic violence as well, which I want to really stress on, because a lot of numbers don't capture men, because there is still that stigma around men being abused, men being victims themselves, and because they are not really allowed to be victims, I don't think a lot of them come forward to report abuse. So although these numbers, like for example, this stat in 2018 that said, according to the 2018 police reported data, most common form of IPV experienced by women was physical assault. It doesn't mean that men don't experience physical assault either. It doesn't mean that, like for example here, rates were higher for women, 4 times higher for women than men in Canada. Again, does not mean that that covers all the men that have also been not reported to be abused. And what I also wanted to bring to the table is between 2008 and 2018, most female victims of intimate partner violence were killed by either a current or former legally married or common law husband. 73% of them, or boyfriends, were responsible for 26%. So when there is intimate partner violence, it doesn't just end at, the emotional, the mental, the physical. It could go as far as like ending the person's life. And I think one of the scariest things that I saw was, I can't remember the person's name, but there was this woman who was a strong advocate for women to get out of domestic violence situations, and she herself had gotten out of one, but what ended up happening is that person ended up breaking into her house, waiting for her, and killed her. And what's terrifying about that is that this person is going around preaching, getting women out of domestic violence situations, like owning your femininity and being strong and independent and successful and owning your own ground that you walk on. And unfortunately, she was a victim of domestic violence herself. So
Even
it really,
being aware and educated, sure.
right? That's what's so scary. You can, and I think Star was talking about this earlier, that you're a strong advocate for women's rights and being aware and being strong and independent. But when you were in that situation yourself, you were like, I know this is bad, but But
There was a but, yeah.
there's
I
a
mean,
but.
there's also like the context. A lot of people who get into abusive relationships are not coming off the heels of the greatest time of their life, right? It's not
True.
like they were on the top of the world and that's why they
True.
got in a relationship with this person. It was
Very
because
true.
I was at rock bottom and I had lost another relationship, and being wanted by someone awful was better than being wanted by no one.
Right.
So I totally understand. If I could just add a quick statistic to what you were talking about,
Please,
how
yeah.
the victims, because you were talking about how it's not just that the effects reach so much further, right, than just, like damaging a person's confidence, right, that people get killed and everything, but also economically. Victims of domestic violence face so many more socioeconomic challenges because of the statistics I'm about to read. So victims of IPV, of domestic violence, lose a total of 8 million days of paid work each year. So
Yeah.
Total Williams.
Yes.
The cost of intimate partner violence exceeds 8.3 billion. But then between 21 and 60% of victims of intimate partner violence lose their jobs due to reasons stemming from the abuse. And then a 6-year study was done in the 2000s. And during those 6 years, 142 women were murdered in their workplace by their abuser.
Oh my God.
78% of women who are killed in their workplace, during this time frame, were killed by their abusers. It's not like some random guy who came in and like shut up a store and oh no, died. Like 78% of women were killed intentionally by people who knew them and used their knowledge of their whereabouts to hurt them.
Yes.
Wild. So
That's
not only are you
terrifying.
suffering from like the psychological effects of this, but economically it reinforces this cycle or this trap, right? That you cannot, you're missing work, you're depressed, you're anxious, your health is suffering, right? And so you lose your job. How are you supposed to get out if you have no economic independence? If you're reliant on another person for meeting your needs, right? So
Actually, if I can add on to that, that stat actually even further reinforces that your safety is taken away from you. So sure, you're outside of the house, right? You're at work, new people, different people, but even you're not safe there. You're not even safe there.
You're surrounded by people.
You're not even safe there. So domestic violence often is confused by just harm inside the home, but it's more, like Star mentioned way in the beginning, it's more about who is doing that harm, where the domestic plays in. But it could really be anyone, anywhere. I actually had a video of a person who so this was a baseball, I think, a baseball player that luckily was caught on camera abusing his girlfriend. I think I did some further research into it, and he was taken off the team. But can you imagine if this footage wasn't available? So there's no audio, of course.
Taken off the team. He's not put in jail. No try.
Yeah.
No.
So do you see this? And I'm so sorry for these.
Oh my Lord. Oh
images.
My God.
This is real. We don't know what is being said. And he picks up her glasses, gives it back to her, and then does it again. Like,
oh my God.
And then they just keep walking.
And then keeps walking, gives her glasses back, picks up her bag, continues about the day. And I bet she's probably feeling in that moment that I messed up. I did something wrong. I deserve this.
And what's wild is to us Rain is like, what in the fuck? Like to us, that's what in the fuck. And to this girl, this is probably just a Wednesday.
Oh yeah. Like this is just I messed up. I did something wrong.
The one time we saw it,
maybe I was talking to the wrong guy, the server at the table. I was staring at him too hard, too long. Like you're making all kinds of excuses for situations like that.
Yeah, exactly. She's body language like it's normal, but Ben said,
Exactly. The body language is what was messed up. And the fact that he just goes ahead and picks up her glasses and gives it back to her and they just keep walking, like you can tell, kind of like what Star said, that this is just an average everyday situation. This is just like, another day of being, hit.
That like brought there's so many things, like it, like as a kid, like the memories of like getting hit and then like pick that up, what are you doing? Like I got hit and then also scolded that I dropped something.
You're not allowed
to
you're not allowed to feel any kind of way about what just happened.
Yeah.
You're
Stop
not allowed.
crying. Stop crying. You deserve this.
Right. And you're made to believe that. And so you accept that as the norm and you learn to live with it. That is the norm. That is your life.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at the. Can I get a welcome? No.
I saw that too.
Welcome me. Yeah. I can't believe it. So, but another thing that occurred to me is like you preface it with he did get kicked off the team.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the most we can hope for in a situation like this is that anything will be done about it, right? We're like, oh, we got kicked off the team. Like that's something.
That is
but, like,
something, yeah.
He's gonna go on having a career somewhere. He's gonna still be a multi-million-dollar athlete, probably. Right?
And there will always be like we're not even gonna get into this, but we know about that locker room talk. We know that there's people who are in charge of sports teams that condone bad behavior. So there will be eventually a team who this is not such a big deal for. Like, oh, what she do? That's gonna be the question. What she do? What she do this time?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
it's not there's always going to be those people that don't think that this is a huge deal, don't think that this deserves any kind of repercussions, serious repercussions. I did want to go forward and talk about the different the cycle and the stages in violence, but before we get into that, I actually wanted to watch this quick video that I found that I really love the wording that she uses towards the end. And I feel like that captures, I think, one of the most scary things about being in an intimate partner violent situation. She says something like, I don't wish this on anyone, to look up at someone who claims to love you and is threatening to end the life that you have. Like, you're looking at someone who praises you, says that they love you, but they're literally threatening your life. Like the life that they want you to have, that they claim that they want you to have. They're literally threatening it with their own hands. So this is just a snippet of, I think, a CBC documentary. So she was asked, who are you today?
I'm a survivor. I don't think I've said that out loud. It was late 2014, early 2015 that I met my former partner. We were introduced by family members from either side. It started off very, on the surface, like very much a love story. We had a lot of fun, so many similarities. He didn't live here. He actually lived in the States. So it was a lot of like back and forth visiting, which was great too. In the beginning, it was psychological and emotional. So I would say things like we'd get into a huge argument and then I'd just be like, it's too much for me. I don't want to be in the relationship anymore. And he would literally call my phone like 100 times in a row. 100, to dial somebody's number 100 times in a row is ridiculous. Over and over and over and over and over again. And I'd start to feel like, oh my God, like I'm such a monster, this poor guy, like he wants to work it out, this and that, whatever. So the emotional and the psychological was common, and that was like maybe like for the first 2 years. And so it didn't really feel like what I'd term as abuse. When he actually came here, moved here, that's when the physical started. And that's when I started to see like, this is crazy. I realized that it was either going to be me or him, in the sense that if I didn't leave, I wouldn't be around. It was like year 3 that when the physical started, just, you know, shoving and stuff like that. And I definitely don't want to come across as so victimized that I never defended myself. I would shove right back, like, and I'm in shock, like somebody you love, like putting their hands on you, like, what are you doing, right? But then very quickly it progressed into things like being choked against a wall. There was even a point where he tackled me like a football player, and he's a big guy. And I would never wish on my worst enemy the feeling of somebody's hands around your neck and looking at somebody who has proclaimed that they love you, but is literally jeopardizing your life. I never had real, sincere thoughts of truly leaving until the physical abuse began, because that's when it was my wake-up call. Yeah, it was my wake-up call. It was an entire turning point in my life. 2019 was the year that broke me, but it was also the year that blessed me with a strength that I earned. I'm grateful to say I'm in a great space right now. Very grateful to say that, because some women will never get to say that. It's a difference between literal life and death. And I would advise women to choose life. Do whatever you need to do to survive. Yeah, and be strong, but don't stay. Don't stay.
I remember when I watched this video, it like shook me, and like I was in tears, because this is someone who thankfully survived. But I love that she mentioned that, you know, a lot of women will never have the opportunity to say, I got out, I survived, I'm okay, I'm better. And it was just such a powerful video that I just had to share it with you guys.
Yeah.
Something she said at the end was really interesting to me, that she caps off with right at the end, that like, don't stay. And I think that concept is so interesting, because all of us, I think, who have gotten out, who have survived, say the same thing, right? We all say don't stay. But when you're in it, there's so much that goes into that choice. Both psychologically preparing yourself for such an upheaval of your life, an upheaval of your relationships, your sense of independence, but also like, even if you're planning on leaving, one thing that I wrote down, because I wanted to make sure I said it, because if I say nothing else on this show, I want to say this. You're experiencing domestic violence or any sort of manipulation or abuse that makes you feel less than good, that makes you feel unworthy. Even if you don't plan on leaving, or even if you don't plan on prosecuting them or ever making a twit longer or anything, save all of the evidence. I didn't take video, because I always thought, well, I am not a vindictive person. When I left Brian, I absolutely 100% planned on just never talking about it again, because like, I wanted it to be done. I didn't want to think about it again. And it wasn't until seeing how little, how few people gave a shit that I started talking about it more, because I was like, wait a minute, the people who do know don't even care. What and then all of the questions started, and then it was, well, where's the evidence? Why didn't you take any video? You don't have any video, any audio or anything. You don't have anything. And I said no, because I have one video, and it's not even video, because the phone is under my blanket, and so the screen is black, but you can hear us talking. And it was the tail end of a conversation, like the week before I left. Like, it took me that long, even after I'd planned on leaving. It took me that long to think, maybe I should just have some sort of documentation on this, just in case. And so even if you don't feel like you're ever gonna out this person, even if you say no, like, I don't want to go public and I'm not going to prosecute them, I just want to leave, still keep like, put them in a like, take video, take photos, whatever you need to do, and put it in a drive. And just keep it as insurance for yourself, for your own emotional well-being, so that if somebody is on the internet saying this chick is just spouting bullshit, you know that you have that in case you want it. Because like, there was a point this year when my story was getting picked apart and I was kind of going viral, that a lot of people said, where's the evidence? And I wish that I had not had that conversation with myself. I wish that conversation with myself had gone differently. specifically that I had, because I remember thinking like, oh,
I should probably keep some of this stuff.
I should hit record, and there are like 2 little things, but they don't capture enough because I just didn't have the forethought. I just thought like, I'm not that kind of ex-girlfriend, right? I'm not that kind of person. I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to hurt his channel. I mean, this was literally how I thought. I don't want to hurt his channel. I can protect myself, and I can protect myself without damaging his reputation, hurting, like, he's got a relationship with kids, and I'm not going to damage any of that or jeopardize any of that. But I'm willing to jeopardize my own future.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so.
Right.
Yeah. If you're in that situation, please keep evidence. Just please, even if you don't
really
ever do anything.
Point. Really great point.
And even evidence could even be, like talking about what happened right after it happened, and then you emailed that to a friend of yours.
Yeah.
And then at the very least, you go, "This happened this day. I remember it happening this day, and I sent this email to this person talking about it." It's very hard.
Conversations. If you're on Discord, take screenshots of your Discord. Their messages, because he went back and like scrubbed everything. Just for your own self-preservation, you know. Sorry,
it's really hard, like on that note of like of trying to prove things, like as a kid, not a thing. And also, if you're like, I grew up, like my whole environment was toxic. If I went to my next door neighbor, they're doing the same thing. You know, I got like the thing that like my internet cut off before, what I was saying, like there would be times when my neighbor came in, saw something was going on, and then she hit me. So it was like justified. Whoa. It was justified. Like, hey, I'm also here to
discipline
to lend
you
a hand.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Lend a hand.
Literally. Oh my God.
Yeah. Lend a hand. Like, so it's just like things like that. Like, it was a really big deal because like, even despite all of this, my mom was technically like the person that knew the most about what was happening, right? So like the most likely to possibly defend me when she did physically defend me. Like there were many times when she put herself physically in the middle of me getting hit, or like her like trying to keep the door shut as I have like my feet up against the door because I was on the phone too long, and my dad ripped the phone out of the wall to beat me with it. And so like it's and then when I was 17, my mom passed away. So then I lost the one person that like I felt was protecting. But then my family the toxicity of my family was, even though she died of cancer, my family straight up blamed this 17-year-old for her death because I caused her so much stress being a bad kid. All around, whole family. Like, not in the house family, like family that lives in the Dominican Republic, family like neighbors, all that stuff. Like, this was a thing. Like my dad tried to leave me in the Dominican Republic the year after, like literally took my passport and my ticket and tried to leave without me, so that I was just left in the Dominican Republic. Oh my God. Like with my aunt, who's just like because I wasn't even staying in the same place as my dad. Like if we went to the Dominican Republic, we all stayed in different places. Like it was just like so it's just like, what do I do? I mean, I moved out at 19. That's what I did, is I moved out at 19 because there was no other way. Right now, it's so hard because like I never left. Like my dad's still alive. I have a child that now like gets along with my dad, and that's so weird. But at the same time, I'm like I can never leave you with my child ever. And that's like a thing. It's like I've lost that. Grandparents watching the kid, I can never have that because I don't trust them. And at this point he's like 70 something years old, so whatever reflexes, I just don't even trust it. Like even if he had the reflex to not, like, I just feel like there's too much in him.
Of course.
Like
Yeah.
Too much has happened.
Too much. But like to even see him be a grandfather and be like like nice to a kid and stuff, and I'm just like, damn.
Why? Yeah.
Why couldn't you do
wrong
that
with
for me?
That you didn't give that to me,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Why is it? Yeah, that's so warped. I'm so sorry. Fuck.
That's gotta hurt so much.
Because
You also probably feel like how different life would have been if you could have just given me this. Maybe mom would have still been around because she wouldn't have been under so much stress, or maybe I could have had some more time with her without her having to have beatings for me. Like, there's all of these things probably that are going through your head, like when you see that, and it's like you want to be happy because your kid has a grandparent, but you're like, there's so much resentment also, and like
you had to claw your way to survival and to wellness.
Yeah,
and you are now, and so what's the difference between you and your daughter or son, right? That he would be so cruel to you and so kind to someone else,
right? Right.
Oh my
so
God.
strange.
Right.
And I mean, that's like, I think every abuser has their target, and everyone else is treated very differently, right? That tends to happen, but
Very true.
but it has such, I mean, you're talking about how you moved out at 19. I did the same thing, actually. The only reason I still have student loan debt, like both my parents had zero income. So I went to school on federal grants. And the only reason I took out loans was in order to leave my grandparents' house. And I had the same thing. Like my mom was hospitalized for schizophrenia when I was in second grade. And so I was raised by her parents, my grandparents. And my grandfather was like product of an abusive household, an alcoholic father himself. And so he has the same control issues. And this is, we're talking, Raven mentioned the cycle of abuse and the cycle of trauma. And there are kind of two different cycles at work here, right? Like the cycle of abuse itself, where you've got like the tension building and the
honeymoon right in the beginning.
The honeymoon and the reconciliation, and then it happening again. But then you also have this cycle of violence that recreates itself when you experience that that loss of stability and that loss of control at another person's hands. And then when you grow up and are trying to resist those qualities in yourself, but seeing it play out around you is so surreal, and makes it so much harder to succeed. Like we've heard these statistics about how prevalent this problem is, and imagine how many more like artists and philosophers and scientists have if we didn't have all of these people crippled by trauma. Who were spending their years trying to make ends meet, trying to survive as a 19-year-old on their own, instead of being fostered by a loving and supportive family.
It's really interesting because now that makes me think of like how toxic environments think they're helping. Like for example, I remember being like 10 and having an older cousin of mine make me taste beer, because she was like, you need to know what this tastes like so that if a man ever tries to give you, this is me, like I'm 9-10 years old. So if a man ever tries to get you drunk, you know what they're doing. Like I was like, Jesus, but like pay more, like there's
so much other stuff that needs to be focused on.
There's people like this in the family, and this is the way that they approach it, is going, know the taste of beer so that nobody ever tries to sneak this in, instead of like that's how they think they're helping.
Wear a different skirt when you walk out of the house at night, right?
Right.
Oh, you know what this reminds me of? My coworker told me that her brother was, I believe, 13, and as every normal 13-year-old shouldn't be engaging, in my opinion, in sex. He wasn't, and his dad was like, what? You've hit puberty and have never felt a girl? I'm gonna make it happen. And he forced him to have sex. This child was and like, y'all who are regulars in my stream know that I wouldn't say that I'm old-fashioned, but I feel like
Annie's face right now.
I feel like sex is really more complicated than we think it is. It's more than just two people primally sharing an experience. There's a lot more that happens to people when they're in having sex with each other, and I think there is also an emotional level of maturity that you need to have sex. At 13, you don't have that. You're not ready to deal with the effects of sex at 13. And the fact that this kid was pressured to have sex
by his own father.
by his own father.
Yeah.
Because he's helping
Right.
him being a man. He's trying to make him be a man.
It makes you wonder what goes into what went into his father's life experience that
Probably
made him
the same
that way.
thing.
Word.
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
the same
The cycle of
thing.
trauma, right?
Bizarre.
Like how the cycle of abuse and how we see that play out in generations, right? That you have family members who have been conditioned by their family members, who have been conditioned by their family members to both tolerate and perpetuate abuse. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You know,
awful.
when we're talking about the cycle of abuse, and we're talking about, you know, the ways in which each of us were victimized and whatnot. I just remember the times when I had to go to a mandated 8 weeks of victim abuse classes or therapy rather, and then my husband then had to go to 52 weeks of abusive classes, you know, his mandated classes. Every time he would go in, he painted this facade that he was an upstanding citizen, and he, you know, and gained the confidence of his therapist. And his therapist would literally write good things about him. Oh, he was
a
he's
professional
showing so much-
manipulator. Oh
yes,
my God.
showing empathy, showing sympathy, so showing this. And he played the system. He literally played the system. And then when he would literally leave, steps out of the building, me and the kids, me and the kids would be in the car waiting for him to get done with his therapy or his courses. He would come out. First thing he would do is sit in the car, turn on the car, and he goes, "This fucking thing," and he would just yell and scream. And now we're back to like, oh well, this is bliss.
Didn't really help.
Yeah, yeah. He would play the system, play the facade, right? You know, put this facade on and manipulate the system again, and manipulate his therapist to make him feel like he was the upstanding. He just threw on his charm, and that's the way that he would do this, not just in class, but in life. Like he would go through every scenario where we were like, he taught baseball, he coached baseball. He was always the charmer, right? The charmer, right? That he was the comedian. He was this, he was that. Everybody kept telling me, "Wow, you must laugh every night. He must make you laugh every night. Oh, this." Is your family like always like on the high? I'm like, if you only knew.
If you only knew.
Yeah. If you only knew. Yeah.
And then
so
when the
that
things come out, you're seen as the bad guy. Like, you're crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's amazing.
I am the bad guy.
Yeah, why don't you appreciate him? Maybe you're just like maybe you're not giving him enough, right? Like maybe
Right.
You're the problem.
Right.
Are you not appreciating what he gives you? I mean, he's so nice
Wow.
and charming, and
He's so helpful. He's this and yeah. So and it's not. I think it's not just educating those that are going through it, like the victim and the abuser, but it's also educating the public.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
you know, you need to not only recognize those symptoms. You know, if you see telltale signs of things that are happening that aren't right, you also need to be the one to kind of, you know, not just support, but also maybe take it one step further. Case in point, I did leave one time in the middle of our marriage. I did leave one time, and when I was at a family party, our very outspoken uncle just approached me in front of everybody and said, "Now, I think you need to go back to your marriage and work it out, because, you know, don't bring shame to the family.
Oh, yes.
You know, you need to go back."
The old
No.
shame. Yeah.
Shame to
Right.
the
I'm like,
family.
no. I'm trying to do the right thing. You're not supporting me. So again, when I say educate, you're not only yourselves, but you need your support system also needs to be educated, right? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Fucking.
right. That's
like this conversation, we're all just like we can
I
really
know.
we all have our own
Angry.
and for every given example, we're all like, oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just that that idea of like family saying things bring shame to the family, when you're like, then choose the real thing that brings shame, not me.
Yeah.
Like, it's
sorry
just
that
like,
my
it's not
suffering
me.
is inconvenient for you.
Sorry, my suffering is shameful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't take it.
Reputation
Sorry, I
is
can't
way
take
more
the
important than my
abuse.
mental health, right?
Yeah, I knew a family member who was going, like an extended family member who was going through an abusive, physically abusive, well, and verbally and emotionally abusive. It was to the point where like if she ever didn't smell on point, we all are human, we sweat, like it's normal, he would make comments about that and be like, oh my god, you're so disgusting, you're so ugly and so gross, and he would beat her. And when she went to her parents about it, they were like, well, you can't leave, like what are people gonna say? A divorced woman? No, you have to stick it out. Like, do better for him, be better, and then he won't beat on you. And it's like,
Yeah.
she went back. So she went back, and imagine going to your own parents trying to find comfort and safety. And remember, this person has cut you off from your friends and everyone else. So the only people you have are your parents, and they're not even supporting you. Where do you go?
Right.
And you
Right.
have kids.
No,
little
this
ones.
also speaks to, I mean, I'm I think the only person that's not qualified to speak on it, but how domestic violence affects people of color and people from like Asian communities and cultures that really, really place a lot of value on family, very differently than it does people who are from like from white families or from families that are like non-traditional. I think that the emphasis on like honor can make for really toxic situations. And I only know that because I've seen it in friends of mine, where their families are very traditional. And I think, like, obviously, I think the more time that passes, I think we get further away from that paradigm. But for cultures where family honor is held as like a cultural staple, then that fear of leaving is just cemented by thousands of years of tradition, right? By the societal expectation that there is a sense of there's that you will be disappointing everyone around you if you leave, that it's actually the wrong choice.
Right.
And it's interesting when that culture is confused with religion, because culture sometimes is confused with religion.
Yeah.
And then they will use religious texts that are taken completely out of context to back it and be like, do you want to displease God? God never said you could do this, this, and this. But meanwhile, if you truly understood, right? Like, so it's just,
I mean, I was
even Catholics that don't believe in divorce, right? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was a child who my mom literally threw holy water at me.
Oh.
She went, be gone,
to cleanse
demons.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get thee behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, just okay. All right, then. I guess I'll just go to my room. Cause like, what? What? I just had holy water thrown at my face.
Not to make this about religion, but I am a little passionate about this specifically. I do want to say that if you're ever in a situation where people use religious texts to treat you poorly, just remember, right? Just remember, a truly religious person who, I'm only going to speak about Abrahamic religions because that's all I like. That's the most knowledge that I have. I don't have much knowledge about other religions. Abrahamic religions at the core believe that God is the best judge. You live your life with peace, kindness, humility, compassion. And people who truly believe that are the ones that will not be treating you in this manner. So anytime people use religion to manipulate you and to treat you poorly, they're using religion inaccurately. They're
weaponizing it.
They're weaponizing it, exactly.
Yeah,
because there are normal people that choose to lead their life with love and compassion and care and kindness, and they are, in my opinion, the true people who like believe in religion and believe in God, because that is what they're preaching. They're practicing what they preach. So don't ever let people like use that kind of
compassion is
garbage.
the hallmark of religion, not judgment.
Right, because
Yes,
ultimately you
yes.
believe that God will be the best judge. Who am I? Do I have a direct line to God? I do not. So how do I know you're going to hell? How do I know you have demons inside of you? I don't.
Yeah.
God knows. So
Yeah.
I do want to just quickly mention that. So
Definitely.
Yeah, not for sure.
because it's like
it
really
was-
an important thing to note.
It
I
really
mean, it
is.
definitely
because
played
there
into
are-
my abuse as a child, for sure.
Right,
100%.
Yeah.
right.
There are plenty. It's amazing how many people I know now that have religion in their lives and are so different than how I grew up seeing people with religion in their lives.
Yup,
Like, it's like,
yup.
oh,
That's
okay, no
how it
wonder
can
when I
be.
was
Yeah.
like 15, 16, I was like, forget this.
Mhm.
All religion. No, thank you. And then growing up, like, I'm still not religious, but there's values that people like, there's this core of values that they have in common, and the people that follow those values
Right.
are great people.
Yeah.
And you don't have to believe in the same thing to do that, but like,
no.
it's
Just be a
just-
decent human being, baby.
Just
Please.
be a decent human
Please. It's really not that hard. Abusers, please. Like, really,
Yeah.
it's really not that hard.
So
Yeah.
this wasn't on the agenda, but if you don't mind, I'd love to stick it in there.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about it before the show. The way that the pandemic has shaped the scene, the sort of landscape of domestic violence, and how that has exacerbated things.
Oh,
Because
yes.
I feel like so studies have shown, I guess a lot of studies have been done on the rates of domestic abuse with relationship to the pandemic, and apparently like 8 or 9 of them found that abuse rates had about stayed the same or had decreased, but like 28 different studies showed an 8 to 9% increase in
Oh,
domestic
I
violence
believe that.
in not only domestic violence reports, just reports.
Just reports,
So
yeah.
if the tiny sliver of people who are reporting domestic violence have risen by 8% in a year, imagine how many have gone unaddressed. And I think part of this relates to what we were talking about of like with the do I count thing, is that we get so used to seeing domestic violence as a thing that happens to victims, a thing that happens to other people.
Yeah.
There are certain, there is a type of person who like there's a type of person who goes crazy and ends up in a mental institution, right? And we think, oh, certainly my mental
That's
health
not
crises
me.
are not that.
Yeah.
That's not me, right? We do the same thing with domestic violence. So when we see it happening to us, we can know in our minds that technically this fits all of the criteria. But especially if your relationship has been good, like that woman was talking about how he'd always been manipulative and emotionally emotionally and psychologically abusive, and then the physical abuse didn't start till 3 years into that relationship.
But also, did you
And
notice
so-
her tone when she talked about the physical? She was like, it was things like shoving. I noticed the tone, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal type of tone. Shoving.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
minimizing.
When her tone changed, I was like, she still feels like there's a part of her that still feels like it wasn't that bad till it got really bad. See,
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that, like, especially in the pandemic, we have people who are in otherwise healthy relationships, or who are in relationships that are okay but are under a lot of stress. And I think that's the main reason for this massive uptick in cases, is that the isolation of being in the same physical location, the same space as someone with no outlet, under a lot of financial stress, under stress at work, under the stress of not being able to see support systems and being cut off from family and friends. It is a perfect storm for things like that to happen and go unchecked and go without any sort of, without recognition or without recourse, right? Because what do you do when you're not allowed to like go out and see friends? If you like, normally if you'd go out for a weekly night out with the girls and you'd be able to say like, it's getting really bad, I really don't know, like he's never been like this before. And now you don't have that ability. Now you have to like message somebody about it. It doesn't come as organically, but you have to take the step that step to like broach the subject. It makes the process of recognizing that you're being abused, and also the process of finding someone to hear you, to bear witness to that.
Right.
It's so much
Harder,
more
so much more
difficult.
harder.
So
And victims
Yeah.
of sexual abuse, like who are being abused by their
Yeah.
family that they're living with, you don't have a
Yeah.
place to run away to anymore.
Right.
yeah,
just
because they were getting
stuck-
calls from women who are like states away, who are
Easily
just trying to
accessed.
go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like literally didn't
Yeah.
care. They said, just take me anywhere. And their calls are like, their lines are backed up. It's wild.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine like thinking about like myself and how like I couldn't, like if I went to the next door neighbor, that would be the same thing. But
Where do
like
you go?
imagine that would be my only resource in a pandemic.
Right.
Who would be the next door? Like I wouldn't.
Yeah,
so
if you don't
all
have
my
a teacher,
choices
if you're
are
not going into
bad.
school.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Like children aren't
Not
going into school. Think of
school.
all the teachers who see like a bruise on a child's arm, or who notice that they're like wetting their pants or something, or are starting to
Yeah.
see signs of abuse. We don't have that anymore. So people are getting away with
Yeah.
things in secret because secret's all we've got left.
Or panicking from loud
Yeah.
sounds. That's another telltale
Yeah.
of like kids who have been through some kind of domestic violence or in a
Yes,
toxic
yes.
situation.
Yeah.
We don't
your
see
starter
that.
response becomes so exaggerated
Yeah.
that like jumping for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we
Wow.
don't have that visual, cues to look out for anymore. But
Yeah.
for example, in Annie's case and Letitia's case and Star, sort of in your case, like even when people see those visual cues, they don't do anything
Yeah.
about it.
Sure. There's so many
Right.
explanations for it when you
Right.
don't have more context, right? I mean, think of
Yeah.
like, I think one of the reasons why my situation is different is that the only way that people had to judge was through stream, right? Because
Right.
that's how they knew me. But imagine, I mean, in a pandemic, that's all you have is people knowing you through the internet.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really tough for sure.
I mean, as a kid, there wasn't a lot that like. So there's, speaking of like types, the manipulation within it is still that like I'm being hurt this whole time, but if I say anything, they're taking me away. They're gonna take you away from us if you say anything. Is that what you want, to not be a part of this family anymore?
Oh God.
So it's like on the one
There's
hand,
the
wait,
manipulation
that
again.
is
the manipulation,
probably
yeah.
the right thing. On the
If
second
it weren't for
hand,
us,
though,
you'd be in foster care. Do you want to?
Right,
Do
right.
you want to be with
They're like,
strangers?
guilt.
They'll probably be
you
worse than
say
us.
some. Yeah.
It's guilt. It's guilt,
It's
right? They guilt you.
guilt.
They make you feel guilty. They put all the blame and all the guilt on you. You are the problem. You are the problem.
Yeah.
And you're going to, and if you expose us, you are the problem.
You're gonna
Yeah,
suffer
you're gonna
for it.
tear
It's
this
not gonna hurt
family
us.
apart. Yeah, this
Ooh,
family
you're gonna
will
tear this
split
family
up if you
apart.
say something and you have to get taken away. You've
Mm-hmm.
now split this up, and now everybody else in the family will know, because this
Everyone's
will be a
dealing
big
with
deal.
the issue you created, that you're
Yep.
part of the problem. It's everyone's paying for your decisions for sure.
So
instead of
yeah,
they made.
and also bruise, like a lot of things like bruises and being in school and stuff, also very calculated, because none of my bruises were visible. So I would never be hit in the face. I would never be hit like
where it
like,
can be seen.
where,
In
like
your
right where it
extremities,
could be
right?
seen.
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't even know if I got many like, I know I got hit in the head, but I had hair.
Yeah.
So but also like literally at like student teacher conferences and stuff like that, I was being hurt then too, because the moment the teacher starts saying that I did something bad, they're holding my hand underneath the desk, and their hand is getting like harder and harder and harder with everything they're saying. So my hand is getting crushed underneath the desk, but like the teachers don't see that, because what they're seeing is me reacting to them saying I got bad grades to the parents, which looks sort of the same as my hand is being
my
super hard
God.
squeezed under a table.
Yeah.
So textbook.
Yeah.
wow.
Annie,
wild, but
it seemed like you were relating to bruises not being where it's visible. Was it the same with you?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I actually, funny story, because I do still have a very tiny little bruise here from when I was burned, when he burned me here.
Wow.
And then I don't have it now, but then for a while I had a phone cord scar and a bruise around my neck when my son was not even 2 years old, I think.
Oh my god.
And I was choked.
And people
And no one
like
noticed
had
this?
this
No
and
one
people
said
still,
anything?
yeah,
No.
because they keep to themselves, right? They're like, well, not my situation to deal with.
Right.
And that's something
It's like
Right.
that thing if you're gonna ask how are you and you're not expecting fine, that's like, oh, then I gotta deal with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just making small talk. I didn't expect your emotional problems to actually become
right.
something to care about, right?
But it was also a thing for me to kind of hide it because, you know, then when I was younger,
Is it
when I was
shame?
married and I was younger, I had to hide it because I didn't want to bring shame to the family.
Oh my god.
I didn't want to feel as though everybody else had a good marriage. All my cousins or my family had, you know, good marriages and families. I was the problem, and apparently I was the cause of it, and I had to hide it. So I did everything I could to hide it. I wore, you know, turtlenecks. I wore long sleeve blouses. I did that. That was my choice because if I went out and exposed myself, plus I was very, very heavy in my worship teams and my praise teams, right? So how would I be? What would the perception be? What would the look be if I showed up talking about, you know, praising God and I have, you know, phone cord scars around my neck or burn scars on my arm? You know, how would that look? I was so worried about like being kicked off of the choir and the worship team. Yeah, I really was.
Sure, because it's probably one of the only things you had that was yours.
Yeah, that was the thing that was my outlet. That was something that I could go to, that I could call my own, that he would never be able to take from me because he hated coming to church. He didn't want to come to church with me, but that was my way of getting out.
Yeah.
But if I were to show that, if I were to be visible and show
It'll
that,
be taken away from you.
yep, it'll be taken away from me. I'll be kicked off. And then where would that land me back? At home. No.
Yeah.
I didn't want it.
Exactly. More time in the environment you don't. How beautiful though seeing you on stream now in like with your neck bared and your shoulders bared and everything. No, I'm curious. The fact that you are clearly like picking out your outfits and you're able to like dress the way that you want and speak the way that you want and be vocal and like how beautiful it is that you have 2 talk shows now when you've had been silenced for
my
10 years.
god.
You know?
Yes.
Seriously.
I think that's so perfect.
It's so inspirational.
Oh God, don't cry,
honestly.
Raven,
I'm
because I will.
sorry.
I will.
I'm
Reclaim your
sorry.
power.
It's
And I know
so-
that sounds really cliche,
it
but the way that you reclaim
hurts.
your power is so perfect. It's so perfect.
But
Yeah.
it also
thank you, you
hurts
guys.
that like people can do that to each other, you know, like we're so horrible. And this is someone who claimed that they loved you. And I think what's scary, bringing it back to the cycles of abuse, is what that woman was saying in that video is one of the first stages that she talked about, the honeymoon phase. Is like in the beginning there are these beautiful people. She said it was a typical love story. He was kind to her, generous. That's where it's too much too soon, you know, that the love bombing that we talked about 2 weeks ago about the in toxic
You
relationships.
guys use that phrase?
Yeah, so the love bombing, too much too
Yeah.
soon, you know, you're the pedestal, you're like the best, you're this, you're that. And then, like she said, the emotional and mental abuse began, where it was like the starting to walk on eggshells, creating an environment where you don't feel safe, where you're cookie cuttering yourself to try to fit what they want from you so that you don't upset them, you know, you don't mess things up, you try to be the best. Then there's those little comments of like, oh, why are you wearing that shirt? I don't like it when you wear that shirt. Or like, why are you going to see this person? I don't like it. And you start getting cut off, you know, from your support system or people that can possibly help you and save you and recognize that you're in pain. And that just builds up, tension building till the explosion and the incident happens. It happens, but then they go right back to the honeymoon phase. I'm sorry, I messed up. You know, I get angry. You know, I drink too much. You know, I was just having a bad day. You know, like sometimes you just get me so angry. You know, I love you. And then it repeats, right? It repeats. So it's just a cycle.
And I imagine in the past year that cycle has been much more rapid in abusive relationships. That it's a lot more because we're all at that threshold, right? Where just one more thing and we're gonna lose it, you know?
Right.
And so for people who don't control
Yeah.
themselves, who lash out instead of, internalizing it or working through it, that I imagine that just happens on a near daily basis at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And already the mindset of like not wanting to bother other people, or like I can't imagine how much now is like, oh, well, there's much more important people in the hospital.
Right.
There's much
I know
more
you
important
lost your
emergencies
job
happening.
too, and during COVID,
Right.
I don't want to add to your stress. And
Right.
oh my God, isn't that awful?
I think that for me too, you guys too, one of the reasons why I think I stayed as long as I did, one, because the kids, right? You know, the kids were very much the center of it all. But I don't know how you guys felt about this, but I also felt as though I was there for a reason, as though I felt like I could save him or rescue him.
Right.
I think
You
a
know,
lot of
Well, that's what people
from-
tell
a
you
lot of
too, right?
victims.
I'm pretty sure you had people in your lives telling you that, you're the one good thing in his life, or like,
Yeah.
he's actually a little better now. If you saw him 2 years ago, he was much worse. So you've definitely
Oh my
helped
God,
him.
yeah.
Right.
You've really changed him.
You've really
so
changed.
much.
So you're
Right.
like, oh,
And
who
we've been
is gonna
poisoned
help
by
him?
like Cinderella story and all the Disney movies to tell us that it's this fantasy. I mean, this is like literally my kink is there's this man who's moved by no one. He's cold and unaffected,
Yeah.
except for this one woman who's his weakness, and
Right.
he would give anything for it. Like that's what I've always wanted. That's the dream, and I think that dream comes both from the reinforcement of like pop culture tropes, but also from any sort of, if you've experienced trauma as a child, right? And that wanting, like feeling like, oh, if just I'm good enough, I can make them better. Like you feel like, honestly, and it doesn't feel like an abuse thing at first. It feels like a fairy tale. Like, oh, if I'm this magical, beautiful, like we'll make each other
Right.
best versions of ourselves. And yes, that is true in a good relationship, but
Yeah.
not.
Right.
Right.
It's the
So hard.
romanticization of brokenness. We were talking about this in my last
Yeah.
real talk about toxic relationships. It's this romanticization of like, I'm the only one who can fix him. I'm
Right.
the only one who has
Right.
made him better. And people perpetuate that when they're just like, oh, if you only saw him a few months ago, or like ever since he met you, seems like he's better. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm fixing him. I'm doing something.
Yeah. And if I could just be
right.
better, then I'll push him over the thing.
Yeah.
I want to become a better
Right.
person.
And one of
Yeah.
the best lessons that I've learned
I
from
could turn him around.
I could turn him around
Yeah.
from a movie called He's Just Not That Into You is
I was just thinking about that last night. I love that
right
movie.
the dichotomy of the exception versus the rule. So there will be some people that have gone through domestic violence situations and they genuinely do change and become these amazing people who are like, I don't want to be that person anymore and I want to be better. Those are the exceptions, not
Yup.
the
Right.
rule. And people keep saying, but Sally was in an abusive relationship and like they turned out
Right.
fine. So you're like, maybe I'll be a
Equivocate,
Sally too.
yeah.
But those are the exceptions, not the rule. The rule
Right,
usually is that either you end up dead or you end up constantly being abused, then your kids end up being constantly abused, and then they grow up to possibly be abusers, and it just continues and spirals.
One type of abuse that we haven't mentioned that just occurred to me is infidelity. And the way that I think partners, because I was thinking about how I was like, well, I really have only had one like abusive boyfriend, but I forget that my friends constantly tell me that the partner that I was with for 6 years, who I was technically married to, had like left me for other women after having affairs with them twice, blaming me for them both times. And I blame
Oh
myself.
my gosh.
Like I 6 years together, and he left me for my best friend after an affair, like a months-long affair, and then left me for another woman that I had introduced him to after a months-long affair. And they weaponize it like you are making this relationship so unpleasant, or you are not a good enough partner, and so I'm seeking someone else. I'm seeking something outside it. If only you were better, I wouldn't cheat. And I think that can be just as abusive and have just as long-lasting effects.
Oh yeah,
as any sort of like other kind of emotional gaslighting.
it's that brainwashing, right? That if you were
yourself,
better,
if your partner has cheated 3 times, or
Yeah.
has once, right? Now, not everybody who cheats necessarily cheats again. I learned my lesson in college. I cheated on my my second like real college relationship with my first college relationship because we had just broken up and it was messy or whatever. And I was like horrified, and I like stopped it in the middle and left the room in tears and immediately went and called my boyfriend and was like, "Hey," and
I messed up.
like some people react that way, right? But you have to think of that like Raven said, the exception versus the rule. If your partner is not respecting the rules of your relationship, whatever that means, right? Whether you're in a committed monogamous relationship, or if you, like I was at the time, we had opened ourselves up to swinging, you can still be cheated on and abused that way. You're still abuse the dynamic of your relationship, even if you're in an unconventional, unorthodox situation.
Right.
So be mindful of that too, that if you're constantly feeling like afraid that if you do any one little thing wrong, you're going to lose him to another woman, something's probably wrong.
Something's probably wrong.
Yeah.
Or another
this reminds me of like, and this is is messed up on many levels. But like there was my parents growing up were super strict, like very strict. And I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. But when I did but my neighbors were somehow sort of the same, but very different, where they went out and did things. So like it was like, on the one hand I could hang out there because my parents would be like, oh, you're next door. On the other hand, like they were pretty messed up people. And so like one neighbor was just like, she was like, oh, Letitia, okay, you know what? I'm going to set you up with a guy. And she was like one of the adults in next door. There were a lot of people that lived next door. It was like a 1-bedroom apartment. And so she set me up. I am 13. I'm 13 years old. I'm 13 years old.
Baby. Oh my God.
She set me up with this guy. He was 25 years old. 25 years old. So I was in this relationship with this guy, and we're now dating. We're dating.
What is he thinking?
And
what?
And so I'm on the phone with him one time, and he's just like, he's genuinely trying to convince me that I don't dress sexy enough. And
13.
I'm
Oh my God.
13 years old.
Yeah.
That's a baby.
And so
What?
I like remember at this age, I actually went like, I was like, I don't like that. And I broke up with him. And I think back on it, and I was like, I was a 13-year-old breaking up with a 25-year-old. Like, because I didn't dress sexy enough.
Why is that even a reality?
him.
Why is that even a thing? That's disgusting.
Like, just so crazy. And then in the end, it was just like, I broke up with him because I couldn't deal with, like, it was just like, I wasn't, oh, fine, that I won't set you up with any more guys then. It was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
Because apparently that's your fault. That's your fault.
Yeah.
Again, we go back to the manipulation and then the guilt that they make you feel, right? I mean, it is, the cycle, it's like when my victim, who was it? My therapist or my victim management counselor was saying, unless you break the cycle, you're constantly going to be pulled in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Yep.
how do you break the cycle? And he says, well, you need to decide for yourself what is more important to you in your life, pleasing him or living.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Ugh.
The fact that even is a thing that you need to decide between shows you how deep the abuse goes, like the effects of it. And we've talked about some of the reasons people stay, like kids, right? You're made to believe to stay because you're sometimes made to believe like who else is gonna love you? You know, I treat you so well. Sometimes it's safety. You feel fear for your life. Like if I leave, this person will kill me. You justify the behavior, right? Sometimes I think you're like no, he was just having a bad day. No, I messed up. If I was a better kid, if I was better to him, if I was more pretty, if I was X, Y, and Z, if I was a better, more successful like my cousin, maybe then he would not be so abusive towards me or whatever it is.
And I think,
well, it won't happen
like,
again. He apologized.
Yeah. I've been so traumatized with this relationship that I can't pull myself to dating right now. It's like even almost going on almost 5 years now. I've gone on dating apps. I've swiped left, swipe right, whatever, and I just can't right now because I think I love my freedom so much more.
Yeah.
Now I love the independence. I love to be able. I'm fearful. It traumatizes me to some degree because I'm fearful that if I do get in another relationship, this person has to accept what I do. This is what I do. I love to stream. I love to game. I love this. I love music. You can't take that away from me because it's not going to happen. Because I worked very hard to get to what I have now. I've only been
so
streaming.
long apologizing for who you are, and now that you have it back, you're like, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm so not ready for it.
As you should.
And
you
Annie
should hold on to what's yours.
Like Annie was saying before, like this, like you mentioned before, where you were like, oh, when my kids turn 18, that's when I'm gonna like get like they'll be grown up and all this stuff.
Right, I can leave.
Sense, yeah. There's this sense of time does a different thing in these situations. Like I feel like being in a domestic violence situation like changed time for me. Time was different, like hiding in a closet, like going to this thing. Like there was certain like I have trouble with like really knowing how much time goes by because I spent so much time trying to make time go by faster.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Like there was so much time spent like just go to sleep earlier because then you can sleep. Then it's the next day. Then it's the next day now.
Right.
Now that's one more day, like one less day. Like, so it's just like
time's different. Time goes by a little different.
Time was a little slow for me. I wish it would have gone by faster.
Yeah. And if
I would purposely
the trying to make it go by faster because it's never ending.
And
I would purposely sleep early just so I could wake up the next day and go to work.
What hit home for me was going to bed and like pretending to be asleep. Just when they come in the room, like I could hear the can open, and I'm like, I'm asleep. Maybe he won't talk to me. And that's actually the one video I have was him talking to me when I was pretending to be asleep and like yelling at me and starting and like saying all these things. And I was like, please, I'm just trying to sleep. And I kept saying this because you you get used to disengaging from life so that you don't have to engage with the person who's abusing you.
Right.
It's wild. I keep saying it's wild, but it really is. Like the fact that this shit happens.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are 4 of us sitting here having the exact same experience. Like, yep, that's how it was for me too.
Yeah. Like, I mean, going to sleep earlier was a big, like pretending to go to sleep earlier was a big thing because I could not pretend to be asleep in the morning. I couldn't pretend to sleep more in the morning because I get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I got in trouble for oversleeping, and getting in trouble for oversleeping for me was not. It was like I remember I got a bucket of water thrown at me, but then like also like I got hit with like a broom, like just hitting me with a broom, just like wake the fuck up. You need to get up. But when you're asleep, it's not happening.
Like, oh my god.
Oh, don't even go there, Star. Oh my god.
The feeling of constant everything's
urgent,
right?
Like I need you right now, and if you don't respond right now, there's a problem.
Like, it's like that you're in constant crisis mode. And like how exhausting it is. Just, hearing you guys talk, I realized just how far I am emotionally and psychologically from that experience, from those experiences, really. From my childhood, like with my grandparents, certainly, but like even with that relationship that was 2-3 years ago, right? I'm listening to like Annie and Letitia talk about their experiences and realizing that I don't have access to the same emotional intensity that it once did. And that's That's crazy to me, because it used to be that all I felt was that urgency, that crisis mode, just all day long, all day.
Yeah.
And and so that's why sleep was fine, because it was a reprieve from that. I finally got, like, not only did I not have to worry about them, right, but I didn't have to worry about my own like anxiety and that physical unsettledness that you have all the time. So
that was your peace. That was your peaceful time. So I actually once had taken a shower. I actually had boiling water thrown at me. He went and he boiled water, and he came into the shower and he poured boiling water on me. Yeah.
What was his excuse? What was the point? What was the fuck? Sorry, I'm just...
Because he wanted to talk. He wanted to talk. No. He wanted to yell. Yeah.
Please tell me he's in jail or something.
No, he's not. Thankfully we're 40, 50 miles away from each other, so he has no business out this way. So,
are you ever?
I can't imagine any number of miles would be enough after something.
Say it
like
again.
That.
Are you ever afraid that he would find you or come for you?
My
come
first
back?
2 years after the divorce, yes, I was really afraid of the first 6 months when I moved out and I moved into the house I was renting. I didn't even want to tell my kids where I was because I was fearful that they were gonna somehow slip and tell him.
Sure.
And then funny story was one day he I think this was a year ago, he had texted me saying, "Hi, I'm in the neighborhood. I'm gonna come visit you," and I'm like, or I want to come visit my daughter, and I said, no. And he says, I'm in the neighborhood. It's 11 o'clock at night. Why are you in the neighborhood? Yeah. So I literally said no. And then my daughter came out of the room that night, and she just goes, "Daddy wants to come visit." And I said, "No, then you need to go downstairs in the carport and visit him downstairs." So she did. She went downstairs. It was a 2-minute visit. He wasn't there to visit his daughter. He was there thinking he was going to get a booty call. And I'm like, oh, frick, no. And I said, no, he's never allowed in this house, ever. Yeah, and it took everything within me to say no, even to my daughter. Yeah, because that's baby daddy, right?
Daughter. Of course, yeah.
So he knew where you lived, that rental.
Yeah. It was years later. It was like, this was a year ago, so about maybe 4 years after the divorce. Yeah.
So hi from Florida. Yeah, exactly.
And your kids were still with him at that time.
Say again?
Your sons, I guess, or your other kids were still with him?
No, they're older. They're in their 20s right now, but one still lives with him even now. They treat each other as roommates, and my youngest daughter lives with me. So all my kids are grown and they're out of the house. But all the while they were growing up and they were kids, they knew that things weren't right because they would, they had their friends to compare their lives with, right?
Yeah.
Wait, they aren't being yelled at. I hear no stories about their dad or their mom yelling and throwing things at each other, knives and glass and stuff throwing at each other. Yeah, literally, even stakes, like wood stakes. One time I thought I was going to get stabbed by a wood stake and that would be the end of my life.
God.
Right. So yeah, there's been a lot. You guys, if you had all day, I could tell you all my stories. But
Annie,
it's been that.
If you don't mind, why till 18? Why did you stay till they turned 18?
Because the kids.
But do you think he was providing enough stability that by staying they at least got something from him? Is that kind of
I
like
don't
what
know.
was going
I think
through
it
your
was
head?
more shame. It was more everything else. It was society. It was my family, my both sides of the family. I had nowhere to go.
For that long.
If I left, I had nowhere to go.
So I don't want to answer for Annie, but
that would mean uprooting 3 kids, or no, 4. That would mean uprooting 4 kids. Where would I go? Who would
what
take
are your
me?
other options? Yeah.
I'm so angry for you because you you like stayed for such a noble cause, and people had so long to help you. That's what I'm. That's my.
My heart breaks for how much of your life.
That's what I'm saying.
Yours.
Thank you.
Like,
you guys.
Annie literally stayed for her kids, and I do hope that your kids recognize and appreciate that. I don't
can't
quite
believe you have
know why
children
one
that
of
are
them
older than 4, but
is
okay.
I don't know why one of them is still staying with the dad, but like I'm not gonna go there. But
The whole thing. Yeah.
I just wish that someone could have helped you sooner, because you would have gotten up on your feet so much sooner, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like you would have lost less of yourself, and the journey to yourself again would have been started much sooner. But you know what? I'm glad you're still here. I'm glad
Me
you're
too.
safe.
I think that's a really
I'm
good
glad
point.
you're
'cause-
alive.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm glad. I know
You guys are amazing. I truly am thankful for the platform and to be able to share. At the same time, know that other people like myself or had gone, not that it's a good thing, it had gone through that. It wasn't just me mentally going through it by myself.
Yeah,
If I would have had the support system then, like I do now,
that
you know,
that's the thing. And you said that there were moments where you didn't care what happened to you. You were willing to just drive, and if
I
something
did.
happened to you, you didn't care. And I'm glad you're still here. I really am glad that you're still here. That
well, thank you.
we're able to talk to you. We're able to see you
Yeah.
flourish and grow and become successful and have your own life and reconnect with yourself. It's beautiful, really.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it may not seem like much, but I'm
Actually,
Yeah,
above
it's a
my
lot.
limits.
Actually, it's a lot.
If anyone understands,
Like, I
how
wanna
much
give
it
you a
is, I think it's
hug.
the 3 of us,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think
Yeah.
that we understand how like it literally is like clawing your way to survival. Like, that's enormous.
And like your own
Yeah.
mental barriers that you have to break that are telling you you're not good enough.
Oh my
If you were
gosh.
better, you're not as talented. You're not
Yeah,
this
it's
and this.
getting
That you
out
have
and
to
then
constantly
escaping
fight
what it's done
against,
to you,
right?
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart seeing other women, other people go through this, because they don't see, they're so blinded, right, but they're so blinded by that love. They think that that they have this false sense of security, this false sense of love, that they don't see. They can't step out of they can't step out of that situation and see it for what it is. And that's what to me breaks my heart. I haven't
Yeah.
been active with with any type of organizations and that, and maybe I should be. Maybe this is an eye opener for me. But I definitely would love to be able to, if anybody wants to. Not that my situation is ever unique in that I did it after 18 years. Anybody else can do it, kind of thing. But I think that my story should be hopefully is an eye opener for some people.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can get out sooner. You can get help. There are other support systems besides your family. Although I didn't know it then, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're not encouraged
there's-
to even look into it. So you're cut off from the support system, the only support system that you think you have, and you're not exposed to any other ones. So how could
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just happy to be among you strong women, and knowing that you have also overcome your own situations, your own the situations you were in. I don't want to say demons, because I don't think demons is the correct wording. I think it's you've overcome the what am I trying to say?
I think there are demons that are
challenges?
created from like the demons of constantly questioning yourself and your worth,
True.
right?
True
So I
that.
think
Yeah,
maybe the
true that.
situation
Yeah.
is not, but they do create your own demons that you have to fight
Yeah.
every single day and convince yourself like, no, I am worthy, I am good. No,
Yeah.
there is something good about me. I am worth something, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's
It's
exhausting.
a forever fight, because it's a sneaky thing.
True.
Yeah.
Could pop back up anytime.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
forever fight.
so
I love
true.
that. I mean,
Before we go on,
true.
I hate to do this, but my meds are making me feel really, really nauseous. So I actually
Oh my
think I
goodness.
have to tap out early, and I'm
I
really. I can
totally-
leave my camera on, but I gotta go lay down. I'm
I
sorry.
totally understand. We can
I just
actually.
started feeling really sick, and I was like, what do I do? But
I know
love
it's
you,
totally
Star.
fine.
Thank you.
We can actually
really sorry.
wrap up right
Um,
now. It's
we
no
got-
problems. do you want to just say some final words, guys? We can wrap up here. I
Yeah,
don't mind.
yeah.
I was
think
just gonna
so.
say in response to this, what some the reasons that people say and leave. You were talking and you were saying like, oh, well, we're 40 or 50 miles apart, and it reminded me of how once I left, even after I like physically got out of that space and was several states away from him, the reason that I didn't cut things off entirely, that ended up becoming a big problem, was because I didn't know what he was capable of. And I think that there's a fear
Sure.
of backlash too, that like with Ryan, we were streaming in the same circles. We were both going to TwitchCon, and I remember like reaching out to the devs and being like, I am afraid, like he had posted this shit on, you guys remember, probably a couple of you remember the Twitter thing where he had like tried to get me banned. It was posting like adult stuff about me, and I remember thinking like, this is a man with a lot of money and a lot of anger, and when he sets his mind on something, he does not stop, like if for better or worse. And if he wants to hurt me, he will. And like distance doesn't matter. Like we have the internet now, right? And so I think that often plays into it too. That once you're gone, it's still not over. So which one is more difficult, staying or leaving, really? Like finding an entirely new life and potentially like, you know, being in a sink or swim moment where you sink, or staying in this hell, you know, that you're in now. It's like, you know, six of in one hand, half a dozen in the other, or whatever the phrase is, where like which hell is worse. And hopefully, I mean, the difference though, I think, is that the challenge of escaping and of getting out and of finding a new support system and re-envisioning an entirely new life for yourself, and Annie, I'm sure you can speak to this, is not as difficult as staying, because it is a situation that has potential for change. And as long as you stay, that situation is not going to change, and if it does, it's only going to get worse. But if you leave, it's going to be really, really, really hard in the beginning. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, but past that, there's better things.
True.
So the whole like it gets easier is cliche but true.
I mean, I think if one person said to me once before, I don't remember who it was, it could have been a pastor, it could have been, you know, a leader, but somebody said, in order for things to change, you have to be the one to move. So
that's deep, bro.
Yeah. Is it better to tread water or use that left? Yes, exactly, Sieta. Exactly.
Letitia, Annie, do you want to add any last words before we wrap up for today?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity for this platform. Star, I love you so much. Letitia, it's really, really, really nice to meet you. And Raven, of course, you know, I love you to death. So I'd love for all of us to, you know, to have this circle so we can bounce, you know, support off of one another in the future. And I do have a talk show that I'm working on, a new podcast I'm working on. So at some point, I would love to bring each of you on as well.
I would love that. I would love that, Annie. Really.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Letitia, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just, gosh, it's so much stuff and so much emotion.
I know.
And, thank you, Zoloft.
Yeah.
Antidepressants. But it's intense how like it's just a thing that doesn't ever go away, and there's so many long-term effects of it, and it's just, gosh, if there's anything that I want anybody to take away, is that therapy.
Yes. Oh my god.
Holy crap, therapy. And if you go to therapy and you're like, this doesn't feel right, try another therapist. That's totally fine.
Or a different style of therapy.
Different styles. There's so many different styles of therapy. There's so many different kinds, as many kinds of people as there are. That's how many kinds of therapists there are, because every therapist is just a person. So it's just like, there's so many times when you could have started therapy and thought this isn't the thing for me, and it could have had to do with the therapist or the type of therapy. And it's not like it's
Give
one
it a
of
try.
those things
Give
where
it a try.
just try it. Even
It took me
even if it's
23
just
years and
online.
over 20
For
therapists
reals.
to find the right one,
For-
but the right one made the entire difference in my whole life.
For reals. For reals. And no matter what, it will not be the therapist changing anything. It will always be you. And the right therapist will help you with that. Realize what you want to do, how you want to change, how you want to be better. And there's such horrible stigma around it. And I just feel like therapists should be like dentists. And like we need to. We need it. We need it.
We need to. We need it.
If you don't mind, before I like go and lay down, on that note, I highly recommend if you have experienced trauma of any kind, domestic violence or otherwise, and you're looking for for therapy, and you've never done it before, or if you've had trouble with therapy kind of clicking in the past, where you come to realizations, but they don't it doesn't change the way that you feel about yourself, or doesn't change the way that you process your emotions, I highly recommend EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it uses the rapid eye movement that occurs during sleep. That is usually when the amygdala is processing all of the memories from the day and putting them in their correct boxes. That's how we sort through things like difficult experiences, right? Say you have a fight with a coworker during the day, and when you go to sleep, your brain is like, okay, we'll put this in the fight with coworker. Oh, we've fought with our coworkers before. Oh, it's going to be fine. So when it happens again, you're like, oh, we have points of reference for this. It's not the end of the world. What happens with trauma is that stuff gets stuck in the amygdala, and when you go to sleep, it does not process it. And so everything is felt as though it's being felt for the first time.
Yeah.
So EMDR actually uses that exact mechanism to force the amygdala to put shit in boxes. And it's prescribed specifically for like combat veterans and people with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I highly recommend it. That's all. That's
very cool.
Yeah, thank you
Nice.
guys.
Cool.
I do know that we have to head off, so I will continue with you guys later and wrap up the topic without my scrumptious guest beside me. But I would like to say bye to you guys offline and say thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your heart with us. Really, I feel like I got to know you guys so much better.
I'm glad I got to know. Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a different connection that's formed with my guests when we're on Real Talks together, because we get so deep and it's like I feel like I already know you and I can just hit you up anytime. You know what I mean? It's like a barrier is broken of some kind. So thank you guys so much for being here. I will be saying bye to them offline. Do you guys want to say bye to everyone?
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Yes, for sure.
I'm gonna go. Yeah. I love you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Oh, yeah. Feel better. Feel better. Bye,
Thanks.
Star.
I'm tougher than
Yeah,
100
thanks.
hours. See ya.
All right. Thank you, Raven. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's my son's birthday, but it's also his fiance's birthday. We're surprising her. We're having a surprise birthday party for her. So yeah. He's so sweet. He's like, are you sure it's not for you? And he goes, no, it's for her. We're supposed to, I'm the
Hello, hello, my scrumptious ravens. Hi, guys. Oh, it's been so long. Hi, hello. Thank you guys for being here with me. What an incredible conversation. Oh my goodness. No, it's okay, Star. Don't worry about it. Continue to be the strong women you are. Exactly. Good night, Annie. A huge, huge, huge special thank you once again to Annie and Star and Letitia for sharing their stories with us. These are real people with real experiences, and you can just see the struggles they've had to overcome and how far they've gotten in their life and how the effects of domestic violence continue, and it's a constant struggle like we mentioned today. So thank you guys so much.
Girl, that was amazing and enlightening. What a quartet of strong and beautiful women.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for those Raven bits. It's I think I'm just still processing everything that I just heard. I don't know about you guys, but like my chest hurts from the stuff that I've heard. It's so sad. It's so sad that these are even things that people have gone through. You know what I mean? Like, why is this even a reality? And this is just a taste of what people all over the world are going through. And what I mean by taste is not to minimize what these people have gone through. Taste in the sense it's not just 3 people. We saw the statistics, we saw the numbers, how prevalent this issue is. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to address this topic, because it is bigger than just a handful of people who go through this. It's the numbers are quite scary. And what's even more scary is that we recognize that there are so many people that aren't visually aren't reported. These numbers are just of people who have reported it. Can you imagine how many people are there who don't report their abuse because they either never know that they're actually victims of abuse, they're not given the tools to report it, they're ashamed that they are victims, they could be afraid that if they do report it, their safety could be in jeopardy. When y'all were talking about how everything is now teachers and other people can't visually see the signs of abuse, I was like, man, shit, that's right, because everything is virtual now. Exactly. And with COVID, like X is saying, that abuse is amplified. I was watching the news a couple months ago, and the news anchor was saying that the numbers of domestic abuse have gone up during COVID. And one of the reasons is that people don't have an escape. They don't have an escape from their abusers. And in addition to not having an escape from the abusers, the abuser themselves, let's say they're an alcoholic, for example, they're given more time and more opportunities to drink, to become violent. They're given more opportunities to get triggered by something the person does and get angry. You know what I mean? Because they're just constantly in the same space as the person that is upsetting them. And it's very sad and it's very scary. I don't even know anyone that has reported it. There you go. Despite how much it was around me. Yep. We were taught at the beginning of the program on recognizing signs of abuse and how to respond to signs of abuse. I'm glad, and I really do hope that education continues for recognizing the signs of abuse, because in all 3 cases of, Letitia, Star, and Annie, there were signs of abuse. People knew that these people were being hurt. They knew that our friends, Annie, Star, and Letitia, were being hurt, and no one did anything about it. Everyone wanted the hands-off approach of like, not my business, not my life. And we also, I guess, have to remember that in terms of Letitia's case, it was a time when she was a child, and maybe at that time also domestic violence was even more stigmatized than it is now. And it was the norm. So speaking out against it, what is that? Why aren't you taking it? So that I would like to believe that times have kind of changed, even just a little bit, that, you know, there is education out there. There are people who are talking about it. There are people who are creating awareness and hopefully making some kind of difference to reduce the numbers. I did see a statistic that says that the numbers have been increasing in terms of the rate of violence has decreased 3 years in a row. So that's something, but I don't know. It's still sad that the numbers are still so high. That's the other problem. So I'm blessed to be pursuing a career where I can take part in that. Exactly. No accountability either just gets me seething. Yeah, exactly. Well, the no accountability part shocks me because it's like, how can you sleep at night knowing that you literally saw a victim of abuse and you did nothing about it? Like, I just, how do you justify that? I don't know. I don't know how you justify that. I really don't know. Yeah. It is so frustrating. I don't get it. I don't either. I really don't. And we talked about how people justify the behavior to be normal, right? It stems from manipulation and brainwashing and gaslighting, that I did something wrong. I'm the problem. They were just having a bad day. I said the wrong thing. You know, if I was better, they wouldn't be upset. If I did things differently, then maybe this person wouldn't come at me like that. No one understands them like I do. I know they actually really love me. They're just angry right now. This is just how they get when they're angry. I'm being too sensitive. These are all things that people say when they are in abusive relationships, abusive situations, where they justify the abuser's behavior. People saw me as a child being disciplined, not a victim of abuse. There you go. There you go. That's the other thing. And I know there's going to be people who look at a situation like domestic violence, like the extended family member, for example, and they're told that you can fix this. You just have to be better. You just have to always be on point, you know, dress up to the nines, you know, make sure you're always perfumed up, looking good for your man, and then he won't get angry and beat you. I personally believe that domestic abusers cannot be fixed, just like toxic relationships, unless they want to fix it themselves. So I personally think that if you are in an abusive situation, a situation of domestic abuse, that the best route and the safest route would be for you to leave. If they need to fix themselves and heal from whatever trauma that they're dealing with that is creating that cycle of abuse, they need to do it on their own. You being there is just going to be an outlet for them to not be accountable for fixing their shit, and more of like, I don't need to fix it, I just need to react, because you're an easy target for them to react. But maybe with you out of the picture, maybe, just maybe, if they genuinely want to fix themselves and get help, they will possibly see that I was wrong, I messed up, I got my own trauma that I'm dealing with, and that's why I was like this. And then sure, maybe they can fix themselves. But my personal belief is, with change, any kind of change, the onus is on the person who has to change to make that change. No one can love you to change. No one can make you change. You need to want it yourself. So if this person is an abuser, they're going to remain an abuser unless they want to change. So it doesn't make sense for you to stay in a situation like that. And what's even worse is that once the victims are out of the situation, there are still long-term effects. Like you saw Annie mentioning that, actually all Annie, Letitia, and Star saying that they still flinch with certain sounds, or there's certain phrases that they'll still use to not always possible to leave. Oh, 100%. I'm talking about the situations in which you can leave and there is a space for you to leave, but you are staying because you feel like you can fix them or you can change them. Sorry, I do want to make that disclaimer. Those are the situations I'm talking about when I say that it's important to leave. And of course, in other situations like we've discussed, you just cannot leave. There are no ways, there's no help, there's no assistance, there is no outlet for you to leave. And those situations, unfortunately, you are stuck. And I would hope that there is someone out there that recognizes that you need help and they come to your aid. But yes, there are situations and people are trapped. You cannot leave. But I think mentally accepting that I need to get out, I need to leave, that sometimes is the first step. And the long-term effects of the long-term effects of the domestic violence can range from, like we mentioned, flinching at loud sounds, overly justifying, like I did this because of this, always having a backup plan ready, changing your opinions to kind of like not ruffle the feathers of people around you, and constantly justifying. I only recently realized that I was physically reacting to things like yelling. Yeah, and those are like long-term effects that stem from the environment that you grew up in, right? I still find myself tensing up when certain things happen, or I have definitely broken down and started crying when someone raises their voice at me. And it's stuff that I'm still working through, and I'm still, oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional and start crying. I'm still like dealing with, and that's why I really do pray that, whenever I do end up finding the right person that I feel like is right for me, and a person that I choose to share my life with, I'm going to be honest with them and let them know that these are the things that I struggle with and I deal with. So make sure that you don't do these things to me, because they will make me shut down. Is the closet a trigger for you, Letitia, or is it a positive place? Ooh, that's a good question. It's a really good question. That's a really good question. That's an interesting question. I had to work through that, what basically turned into hoarding. Right, to create a cocoon. Right, to create that cocoon. I get that, Letitia. I get it. Such an important conversation. Such a good conversation that we had. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that, Letitia. I get that. Well, I am going to sign off for the day, and we are going to raid somebody and spread this good loving over to them. Once again, thank you all for sharing in this conversation with me. It was a really great conversation. A lot to think about, a lot to reflect on. Therapy. Yep. Therapy, man. Actually, real talks are therapy for me. No lie, no joke. No lie, no joke. These talks are therapy for me. Very therapeutic. They make me feel just like reconnected with the things that or I guess like they help me reflect on things that I have struggled with So we are going to spread this good lovin' over to, who should we spread this good lovin' over to? Let me see. I actually was inspired that you had been going for as long as you have. I was always so worried about how long it would take. And see, that's such a good and important thing to note, that everyone's journey is different. Everyone's journey looks different in terms of length, in terms of the type of therapist, the type of therapy. And it's nice that when you can recognize that. Yeah, I agree, B. Still trying to look for someone to raid. Do you guys have anyone in mind that you would like to raid? Daunting. Oh yeah, 100%. Definitely daunting before going in. I think we can send over the raid to... Biru's doing some music. Yeah, let's go spread this good lovin' over to Biru. We're going to spread this good lovin' of Biru, and I will be back later, God willing. I'm healthy and able to stream later in the day. I will be back maybe in a couple of hours, but for right now I'm gonna take a break and actually have breakfast. I haven't had breakfast yet, so now it's basically dinner, so I'm gonna go and eat something. Je suis hungry, and we are going to raid Biru. I think it was Tar who mentioned doing the opposite, which was a great point. And as always, I am wishing your heart and your mind and your soul and your spirit and your body peace and happiness, prosperity, good health, and success. Please choose to be kind to yourself and to others. Stay safe, stay scrumptious, and God willing, I will see you all in about a couple hours. I'll probably be playing some Valorant and some Last of Us. So I will see you all for that. Take care, and Raven out.